Donahue,
Here.
Garrels,
Here.
Gonzalez Thomas,
Present.
Kilper,
Present.
Meadows,
Present.
Slager,
Present.
Swisicki,
Present.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Tom, any items to add or remove to the agenda?
Yes, we will be removing Celebrating Successes and BPS Partners, as both groups will not be able to attend this evening, so both will come back in July's board meeting.
Okay. So that skips us all the way down to 4.1. Any public comment?
No.
No public comment? Okay, thank you. No BPS partners today, so skip, look at this flying through the meeting today. All right, consent agenda. According to board policy, we designate a portion of the agenda as consent agenda for those items that usually do not require extensive discussion before board action. These items are generally routine, recurring, and can be grouped together for efficiency. Brad, would you please take us through?
Absolutely. 5.1 is the approval of the May 20th meeting minutes. 5.2 is the approval of the May 20th closed session meeting minutes. 5.3 is the approval of the May 29th special meeting minutes. And the same thing with 5.4, but that special meeting was held on June 10th. And then 5.5 is the approval of the June 10th, 2025 closed session. 5.6 is the personnel report. 5.7 is our normal payroll and bills. 5.8 is the approval of donations, so thanks to the Batavia Mothers Club, JBN, PTO, and Batavia Youth Athletics. 5.9 is the designation of authorized depositories, the banks that we use. 5.10, certification of hazardous bus routes. 5.11 is a Newzella CNI software renewal. 5.12 is approval of the consolidated grant application. 5.13 is the authorized renewal of phone support. And 5.14 is the approval of the consent agenda.
Anyone have any comments or questions?
I have a question about the Newzella. I looked at it and it looks like it used to be free, but now it's fee-based. And I'm just curious if there are still, a good amount of teachers that are taking advantage of that.
Yeah, we just went through a process of looking at all of our software. We spend a lot of money on software nowadays. Dave has this nifty piece, what's it called?
Lightspeed Digital Insight.
So it tracks everything that's coming in and out of the district and who's using what. Not like in a Big Brother way, but like what's coming in and out of our internet. So we can see basically, because a lot of these software companies have really poor reporting as to like what's the true usage. Maybe that's on purpose for them. So we looked at that. We used Dave's software to look at usage. We think with changes coming to ELA, this is something that's on our list that may not be here next year, but we didn't want to pull this away from teachers at this point. The free version has limited usability. When you pay for it, you get a wider library of the leveled readers for students.
All right, so I have a couple, apologies for not sending them earlier, but, so the personnel report, and I know that Steve's not here, but I'm glad that we have a lot of the hirings, and I was just curious if you can get it to me later, just how many licensed positions we still have open, and then how many para positions we have open, and there are any positions that we anticipate being open at the start of the school. And then, I don't think anyone can answer, right? Which is fine.
I happen to know, because I asked his team earlier today about the paraprofessionals, and we've been making progress on that. We've had several recent hires, and at present there are 12 or 13 vacancies for paraprofessionals. That's just because I happened to ask today, but the others will get you the information.
I know we're really close on licensed staff being done, but I don't want to say that too loud because then something will happen.
Don't jinx yourself.
I don't want to say that on camera or anything.
And the next question is the 5.9, are all those, investment managers, dealers, brokers, are any of them new, or have we been using them,
Nobody is new, no.
and we like them?
Yes.
Obviously.
Mhm.
And then 5.10, are any of those routes newer, like, this is the first year they've been on them, or are these kind of always been our?
That's unfortunately a good question from Mark. None of these are new, but there, I think, is one that is newer and within the last 2 years, but I don't remember exactly which one it is, but we can have him clarify that.
That's all I got.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
So moved by Danielle. Second by?
Second.
Second by Aaron. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Slager, Yes. Meadows,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Swiseki,
Yes.
Gonzalez Thomas,
Yes.
Garros,
Yes.
Arlandu,
Yes.
All right, thank you. Reports, FOIA, Tom?
As you see, there's kind of a consistency over the last couple months, just a higher volume than we normally receive for FOIA requests, but the report's being shared with you here tonight.
Any questions on it? Okay. Treasurer report, Tony?
Nothing out of the ordinary for the treasurer's report this evening.
Any questions for the treasurer report, for our treasurer? Okay. Committee updates, Tom?
The one update, as you know, it slows down a little bit here in the summer. So CAC was one of the groups that did not convene in May, but they have arguably a lot of things that they've been working on, and so they've actually met a couple times here in June, but that's kind of the overall summary that they share out, and that's the work that they've done. You will see one of the items on the agenda later tonight is one of the big ones. That's the big one that they have definitely been pouring their hearts into in terms of effort, so. But yeah, they've done an incredible job. If I could say anything to all the members of our CAC team and the SALT teams, just being able to observe some of the conversations they've been having, it's really admirable to see how much they really care and pour thought into what they're using. And thanks to Jen Hicks for her leadership in that role too.
All right, any questions? Okay. Summer construction update.
Rob Schmidt is here to provide an update on all the goings-on throughout the district for construction.
We can start with storm.
Might need you over at the podium so they can hear.
Yeah.
Sorry. I know, should work that out.
I met with the project manager over at HC Storm yesterday to get the most current update possible. We are on schedule as of right now. The exterior door frames are being installed. You can see the new windows for the main office are cut open. The lintels were installed today. And the tuck pointers have finished all the grinding of the grout, and they actually started putting grout back in, the new grout back in, so we're moving along with that. Roofers will be staging their equipment this week and start working on the roofing. We've already had a lot of the mechanical systems have been delivered to our storage facility. There are some that we're waiting for still and some that are a little bit behind schedule, but we're gonna work through that hopefully. If you wanna go to the next picture, as I'm sure you guys remember, we're redoing the main office. The new entry, secured entry, we'll have the 3 new kindergarten rooms, new art room, new music, new OTP sensory, staff bathrooms, respite, new conference, and new workroom for the staff over there. Next slide, please. Before I go any further, we'd like to publicly thank Bulldog Moving Company. They do a lot of great things in the district and in the city of Batavia, and they came through, and we literally had one day to move everyone out of the classrooms that they were in because the schedule was so tight to the end of school. And we had everything moved with the help of our team and maintenance by 2 o'clock the same day. So it was really quite impressive. So we were able to get done in time, and it worked out really well. So thank you to them. They did a really nice job. And nothing got broken, as far as I know, which is even better. That picture on the left is the old main entrance. You can see there after the doors were taken out. The area, the 2 pictures in the middle are where the main office used to be. as well as up on the top right. And then on the bottom right is where the new main office will be. That used to be the music room. That's been completely gutted and the new window openings put in. For those of you who are not familiar with construction, it is amazing to watch demolition crews and how quickly they move through a building and get rid of stuff. It's incredible how fast they move. So that was nice. They were in and they were out, and now we already have walls up, and it's been really nice. Next slide. So as you can see there, that's the main entrance to Storm on the left. We're gonna keep that verbiage up there for someday whenever anyone takes the wall down. They can see that that's still up there, but that's new walls going in. The center picture is on top is the music room, and then the bottom one is where we tied into plumbing. All the floors had to be saw cut out, not all the floors, but a large number of floors needed to be saw cut in order to run piping to the new kindergarten rooms and the new staff bathrooms. So that was quite a bit of work, but they knocked that out pretty quickly. And you can see in the top right, the new plumbing stubs coming out of the floor there. And then more of where the main office used to be, that's where the music room is now in the bottom right-hand corner. Left one, that's where, that's the B-pod, that's where the classrooms used to be. Those are all gone now. And the middle top one, when the lockers were removed, that really interesting art design on the wall was left behind. It never got painted over, so that was kind of neat to see. That's got the 1970s flair to it. Bottom center is the B-pod where the new kindergarten rooms will be. That's been completely demolished, and there's new walls there now. Top right is where the old, that's part of the B-pod, where the bathrooms are. All that flooring in that area will be all redone as well. And then in the bottom right is the old computer lab, and that's, again, where they saw cut the floors and tied into the new bathrooms. And here's some shots of the new kindergarten rooms, the walls going up, the plumbing in. Yeah, nothing much more exciting there. That's just all the kind of the integral plumbing pieces that are in those shots. And then, does anybody have any questions on the storm as it's moving along? Okay.
I have a general question, but I think I'm gonna wait till you finish up.
And then the LRCs, high school and Rotolo, that's what they used to look like. You can go to the next picture. This is the high school. This was about a week ago. So there's nothing left. If you look at the bottom right corner, that's what it looks like right now. There used to be a couple of classrooms that had doorways and windows into the LRC. Those have already been filled in. And then on the bottom right corner in the very back, the new walls are up, and that's where the new Chrome Depot, and there'll be a new tech office and tech workspace back in there. So we moved the Chrome Depot over there because there was an existing door to a hallway. We can now isolate the LRC from the Chrome Depot before you could have access to both areas all the time. Now we can secure the library, or we can secure the Chrome Depot separately. So that'll be helpful. And I know Dave's team needed some space to do some work, and so that'll be much needed and much appreciated area that we can utilize there. Next slide. And then this is Rotolo. There's still a little bit left in there. Everything's gone now. It's completely empty. The one picture I'd love to show you, I know everyone knows the history of the windows and all the problems we've had with the windows in the LRC. If you look at that detail in the top right corner, it's amazing that they didn't leak more, because there was really nothing there supporting the windows, or it just was not constructed correctly. It's just bad detailing all around, but that'll all be corrected now. And that's all I have for pictures. Any questions?
I had actually two. Now I'm thinking one has nothing to do with this really, but with the hail storms that we had, did we have any damage to our buildings or anything?
No, nothing to the buildings. Some of our mechanical units, the coils on the outside the fins get bent. So our guys have gone through and we have tools in order to re-straighten those the fins on the coils out. So we've walked all the roofs, we dodged the bullet. AGS got beat up the worst, from trees down, and the courtyard flooded a little bit, but we were able to get to it and get it cleaned out right away, so.
Great. And then maybe even for Holly a little bit, or maybe we're planning to do this, but have we ever thought about like creating a video or maybe a picture, roll that, like, this is what this looked like before, and then as you were talking about, watching a demolition is kind of a cool thing, kind of walking through interested parties through that, and then we get to our final outcome, and like share that with parents and stuff like that. Some kind of, video or picture montage that, we can communicate and show people like what's being done here.
So we did that last year with AGS, and just pictures of some of the people working inside and what it looked like outside, and then did an after, like a before and after. So it was more of just like, hey, this is what happened over the summer in case, you haven't been here, so this is something that we did. And then kind of before you come back, this is what you're gonna expect. Plus, we have to redo the drive up and pick up and drop off videos and the plans on how to instruct parents, stuff like that. So we kind of focus on those school communities with that type of communication. But we did posts over last summer about like kind of, oh my gosh, look what's happening over at. So I'm sure we'll start doing that here as soon as we get more. So this stuff is on the inside of the building, so we usually like to do pictures outside, but we can get in there.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Right, thanks.
Nice job.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, tentative budget, 2026.
All right, so just recapping where we are in the budget process. Last month, we showed you the preliminary budget. This month, we're looking at what we call the tentative budget, and in this state, it will remain until adoption in August at your regular meeting on the 19th. One of the things that we're required to do is to post and make publicly available a tentative budget. And so we have posted on the website. Anybody who wants to come visit us here at the offices may review the budget itself if they're so willing to do so. We'll also hold a public hearing for the public to come and address the board on the budget at your next meeting on July 22nd. So that's the process overall. I would say that this budget has changed more than usual between the preliminary and the tentative, and there's some reasons for that I will explain. So if you did review the preliminary budget, a lot's changed in the last month. Overall, what we're anticipating at the moment is total revenue of 132 million with expenditures at 140. That's the total revenue and the total expenditures across all funds, and that includes what are called our on-behalf payments and revenues and payments that are made for our teachers by the state of Illinois. That money does not pass through our coffers. It's just, we have to report it for financial reporting reasons, so we can account for the standards in governmental reporting. What we focus on is the operating revenue and the operating expenditures, and that includes our operating funds only. And that we expect to be 100 million, 100.8 million in revenue with 96.9 million in expenditures. However, we are transferring out of those operating funds $14 million to the Capital Projects Fund to fund, in part and over a period of time, our Warm Safe Drive project. So that makes for a $10.3 million deficit in the operating funds for this fiscal year. And overall, our deficit is 8.3 million. And the reason why we make those transfers to the Capital Projects Fund is it's very challenging to anticipate exactly when bills are going to come due for construction. So especially with the scope of construction that we have going on right now. Some bills come early, some bills come late, and we're straddling 2 fiscal years in the summertime. So we're ending one fiscal year, starting another on July 1st. And so where those bills fall exactly get a little tricky. But it also helps us account for how much we're setting aside for construction. And it functions as sort of a piggy bank more or less. And so that's why we make these transfers. What we're doing in some ways is pre-funding some of that capital projects work, the warm, safe, dry. But we're gonna have to continue to contribute more and more to those funds over time so that we have adequate reserves there to pay for those projects. The good news about those projects, as in this plan as it stands now, is that it doesn't require us to issue debt. But I'm gonna talk about some of the implications of that. By the way, our debt status, we will not have any debt after this fiscal year that we're coming into, 2026. We'll have paid off all of our debt, and taxes as a result of it will go down. So we'll have 2 successive years of taxes going down, the last being this one coming out, because we have paid off all of our debt. Next slide, please, Holly. This is a look at all of our funds combined. So this is total revenues, total expenditures, including those on-behalf payments that I mentioned earlier. And it also includes our ending fund balance. And so blue is revenue, green is expenditure, and you can see that line, that yellow line, is our overall fund balance at the end of the fiscal year over time. And so through COVID, we were accumulating some fund balance. In some ways, from a financial standpoint, COVID was good to us. And that's the only way it was good to us. And you see that, our revenue stood proud over those expenditures, and we were saving money. That's why our fund balance increased. But in the current fiscal year that we're in, it's getting pretty close. And then next year, in 2026, we're gonna be spending more than we take in. And that's planned, and that's in those capital project fund, because we're paying for warm, safe, dry. You can see that yellow line dips down. The challenge, however, is that you see that yellow line, it seems kind of straight, but it's kind of angling down in 2029. It means that we're gonna be looking at a deficit in 2029. Last time we did a projection, we were expecting a deficit in 2030 and beyond, and it's coming closer to us, and for reasons I'll explain in a little bit. So we go to the next one. Now we're just looking at the operating funds. So what does that include? That includes the education fund, the operations and maintenance fund, the working cash fund, and the transportation fund. So those are the funds that we use to really operate the district on a daily basis. You can see that there's a pretty significant decline in the fund balance in 2026 because we're moving a lot of that money out of the education fund and out of the operations and maintenance fund and into the capital projects fund. So that's coming out of the operating funds. You also notice how those blue and green lines are getting close to each other. But you also notice on this graph the other financing. So you see those red bars, and those are negative. Those are the transfers. And that's what's driving that yellow line downward. And that's the reason why we're seeing that downward trend in that yellow line is because we're transferring money out to fund those capital projects. Go to the next slide. Just to summarize again, just to make sure that we're clear about what our total budget is and our operating budget. Our budget is balanced. We're spending more than we're taking in, but it's balanced in the structural sense because we're using one-time funds from our fund balance to fund these capital projects. We're transferring out $14 million, and we're drawing down our reserves. When you saw this preliminary budget last month, I did not have the forecast in there. And Josh and I have been working extensively on that forecast. You see those numbers in there now. We historically have not done a forecast at the time that we adopt the budget. Those of you who've been on the board for a while, we usually talk about the budget, and then some months later, once we have our audit in, we start doing the forecasting. And the reason for that in part is because we know more about what happened in the prior year. We're closer on some of our assumptions. We're not guessing as much, and we can have a better forecast. However, it's also good to do some projections in terms of where you see the futures being when you're adopting this budget today, so you're not making decisions today without incomplete information on tomorrow. Information on tomorrow is always incomplete, but we want some at least to inform some of those decisions. And so I think it's pretty helpful that we're doing some of these forecasts now. But the forecast isn't so rosy. In 2029, we're looking at potentially a $1 million deficit. And that's driven by a number of things, and if we go to the next slide.
Can I just stop you 1 second? Could you go back to the previous slide you showed? Because I knew you were going to say that. So just so I can understand
Yeah.
this document. So if we go to 2029, blue is revenues, green is expenditures and the yellow line is expenditures, so you're probably gonna get to it, I should have cut you off, but
No, no, go ahead.
when I look at that, blue is above,
Blue is
Green.
above the green, but you have to include the red that's next to it.
okay.
So the red is essentially more green.
So you have to add the green and the red together.
Yeah, you have to add the green and red. And I don't know how, one of the things I really struggle with is how can I show what's really happening in a graphic form? And there's just nuance to this. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. But yeah, you look at that and say, well, no, your green bar is lower than your blue bar, so you're good. And the reality is, we could be good if we weren't transferring that money out. But I can't include those transfers because they're not revenues and they're not expenditures. And what happens is, we're transferring money out of one fund and we're putting it in another. But we can't call it a revenue because we would be counting the money that comes into our district
Well,
twice.
you're taking it from yourself.
And we can't call it an expense because we're not spending it twice. So we have to treat them as separate categories, but it makes conversations like these a little bit more complicated.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, and so on the same chart, this is where, and you're probably gonna explain it, but, so what I'm struggling, that yellow line is, it's saying the ending fund balance is positive, right?
The ending fund balance, we do have our reserves, yes. We'll have money in the bank in all years. But that line, because it's trending downward just slightly, I mean, you'd have to really pay close attention to it and you look at the actual numbers when you look at the charts.
Yeah.
It's slightly trending downward, it's just the slightest bit, but that's $1 million, because our budget is $134 million, and so it doesn't take much for $1 million to be imperceptible.
Okay, I get it, but like, to me, I don't, if I was looking at this chart, I would think there's nothing really wrong here.
That's why we have Tony.
And I like to spin a yarn when it comes to like doom and gloom, right? And make everybody, yeah, you know.
Well, for me, Tony, you mind if I just
Please.
make a comment to that? You know, one, I think you have to keep in mind that the board does have a board policy on what has to be maintained in the reserves. And so even though there might be that money there, it's approaching the minimum balance.
Okay.
And that's the concern.
Okay, all right.
Because this district had much more in reserves a few years ago.
Okay.
And that's what's being depleted because of the Warm Safe Drive plan.
Okay.
You'll hit the minimum part, and then we won't be able to move money anymore.
I see. So what is our minimum balance, around 30 million or 35?
It actually changes every year because it's a percentage of revenues, but it would range between, off the top of my head, it would range between about 30 to $40 million.
Okay.
That's what the target is,
So we're
Now,
almost there.
that makes sense now.
yeah.
The
And
second thing that gives me pause is typically when you all see forecasts being projected financially, they're in a 5-year look-ahead window. And as long as that 5 years keeps moving out with each progressing year, typically that's good. The problem here is this window is now 4 years. It stopped moving back. And, you know, I think at some point we have to have a conversation about the rising costs of some of the things that we're looking at with capital projects that are increasing at a rate that's faster than that was anticipated 2 years ago when the board approved the plan. We also have just other mitigating factors I know Tony's gonna get into, so I'm probably stealing some of his thunder.
No, not at all. Those are excellent points. Those are all excellent points. But a couple more I want to add while we're on this topic. One, I talked about this last month, and I talk about it every year, and I'm sure people are tired of hearing about it. But it wasn't so long ago, like prior, you know, here we go, like, you know, people roll their eyes. But this is really important, and for
It is.
the exact reason that Tom
Give
just mentioned.
context.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, not more than a couple, about 5 years ago, we had to issue tax anticipation warrants because in the middle of the year, that yellow bar was so low that we ran out of all money and we could not pay our bills. We couldn't pay our payroll and we couldn't pay our bills because there was no more cash left in the bank to be had. And we issued these tax anticipation warrants, which was essentially a payday loan on our property taxes, so that we would pay interest to the loan sharks so that we could pay our bills. And we don't want, the board said, like, once we got off of this, we're never going back to that. We're gonna institute a fund balance policy so that we have enough cash on hand. We're not wasting our money, borrowing money in the middle of the school year. So that's why Tom's point is a good one. We don't wanna get below that balance. And.
One more point on that, Tony, while you're on that subject. So what would be instances where the district would consider dipping it below that threshold?
I would say there should be no instance.
Okay.
And the reason being is because, when you get below that amount of money, and you introduce uncertainty into a system as to where your revenues are coming, you gotta borrow money really fast to pay your bills, and that would be chaotic and expensive, and that kind of borrowing can't really happen quickly in an institution such as this. There are a lot of controls in place to ensure that that can't happen. And so, that's just a very perilous situation to be in. And that's why, quite frankly, I modified this budget as much as I did in the last month, is because I was paying very close attention to those percentages, and this is as close as I feel as though we should get to the minimum amounts. And that's not to say that we shouldn't and continue to invest in warm, safe, dry over time, and I'm confident that we can and we will, but I don't want to pull more cash out of these funds than we ought to, so that we don't put ourselves in a perilous position where we have to borrow money. We can slow down warm, safe, dry, and that will cost us money, and it will probably also make our schools a little bit more uncomfortable for a couple more years until we get that work done. It might slow us down a little bit, but that's far better than the alternative, which is financial instability and insolvency.
So if I'm, and again, I probably should just let you continue with your presentation, but.
No, these are excellent questions, please.
So kind of how I'm interpreting what you're saying is that by 2029, we will no longer, likely will no longer have the fund balance to take big chunks. To do bigger projects, it will have to be, we'll have to maybe reassess and be smaller in scale and push them out a little bit.
The primary driver of why our plan on warm, safe, dry must change now is that we're losing $1.2 million estimated from state revenue that we would otherwise have gotten under the old model. The state of Illinois is facing financial pressures of its own, and they have decided to prioritize funding the evidence-based funding model. And to be clear, they're putting more money into education this year, or in the coming year, than they did last year. But it's going to needier school districts. It's going into that funding model, those tier 1, tier 2 school districts that are short, far short of adequate funding for their schools. We're tier 4, which according to their models say we have more than enough funding. We have 104% adequate funding, which means like, hey, you don't need any more money out of the EBF model. But the other challenge is, because they're putting so much money into EBF, they're not putting as much money into what we call the mandated categoricals. That reimburses us for our expenses in special education, in transportation, in food service. So when we spend that money, we get some of that money back. So they're putting in just as much money as they did last year to those funds. And everybody, every school district is facing rapidly increasing costs in those areas. So that means that when everybody turns in their receipts and they have just as much money in those funds as last year, everybody's gonna get less than they got last year, because they put all their new money into EBF, which we're not gonna get. So that alone, we anticipate being a $1.2 million deficit for us, and that carries forward in 26, 27, and 28, and 29. So I don't think that money's gonna actually come back to us. It could actually get worse. It could actually go down faster, and if it does, we're gonna have to be in a position where we're gonna have to fill in those holes and maybe slow down warm, safe, dry even more. What I don't wanna do, or what I don't recommend the board doing, is pulling more money out of these funds where we might have to go back to the tax anticipation warrants. I wanna avoid that.
So what you're showing us, the projection includes the current plan from Warm Safe Dry?
It does not anymore.
Okay.
No, unfortunately, it does not.
So even with adjusting, it's still,
The scope of warm, safe, dry remains intact. The timing of when we execute it is now fungible. And what was a 5-year plan is probably a 6, probably a 7, maybe an 8-year plan, and it's probably gonna cost more, because every year that you tack on time to construction is inflation. And the last 5 years, inflation has been really, really painful, especially in school construction. So it's going to be clear, it's gonna cost us more money, and it's gonna take us more time. But we don't want to run the risk of the alternative, which is not having enough cash or being able to put teachers in classrooms and like all the other things that we have to make decisions on regarding our priorities. So this is a little bit more fungible, but still really, really important. This is work that is not exaggerating to keep our schools quite literally warm, safe, and dry. we really don't have much of a choice. It has to get done, and it has to get it done in a reasonable timeframe. And we may need to consider, as a board and as a community, whether or not we issue debt to get some of this work done. There are some mechanisms that the board can consider to do that, where that would not necessarily require voter approval, but that's something to think through, and that is a conversation for a future day. Now, I'm estimating that we're gonna lose $1.2 million in mandated categoricals. It could be 1.6, it could be 0.5. I don't know. I don't have enough information. I do know what the state budget is, but I don't know how these reimbursements are gonna look. Nobody does. Nobody can tell you that right now. So we're going to have to walk through this year by year and make adjustments and kind of be nimble and flexible as to what we fund and how we prioritize and how we react. So the next slide, one more, captures those trends. The other thing that I'm afraid of is that we're seeing some instability in federal aid. By example, the state does not have allocations for Title II, which is teacher quality grants, those sorts of things. We don't receive a lot of money in Title II, not much to even really talk about, quite frankly, but it would be a loss nonetheless. We're receiving less than we would otherwise anticipate in Title I right now, but I suspect that that might come back. I'm worried about Medicaid in particular because of the challenges that revolve around funding Medicaid and the availability of those funds in the long term. So in addition to losing state funds, we could be using federal funds, and this budget doesn't anticipate us losing any federal funds yet. But I'm sure that's coming for us. So we'll have to be considering that in the future. We're seeing transportation, our benefits costs for health rapidly increasing far faster than inflation, as well is the case for special education. We do have some support staff shortages that we keep trying to work through, as I mentioned earlier. We have some vacancies for paraprofessionals. What's good is that our enrollment is stabilizing, and we're also working on an enrollment study to better project what that might look like in the future and how we use space in our schools. But the good news is that we can continue on our capital plan without new debt. The problem is that we're gonna have to stretch it out over a longer period of time, and that's gonna cost us more money.
Can I ask you a historical question? I mean, you've been with the district how long, Tony? 20 years?
This is my 30th year on the payroll.
30 years, okay. So in your time, using your memory, I know I didn't ask you this question beforehand, but how rare is it for the district to have a period of time like this where there's zero debt?
This is, I don't think, haven't gone back to our records, and I think it would be very challenging to do so. But in the 114 years of our existence, I don't think it ever has been the case.
That's what I was trying to say. This is a very rare situation where we're debt-free, which is a good thing.
Good situation.
It's where we want to be, but if, we have to ask or consider that, that wouldn't be like an unprecedented thing or uncommon thing.
No.
Can you explain the Medicaid thing? How does that affect us?
We receive money for services rendered to students who are eligible for Medicaid and the services with which we provide to them that would be reimbursable. And quite frankly, that is the hardest area of a budget to anticipate. Like, it's almost impossible to budget for. If you can budget for Medicaid and reliably understand what you're gonna get from the feds in any given year, I would love to know what your approach is, because it's fascinating. But we're increasingly relying upon it, and it's increasingly becoming more unstable.
And that's because you hear in the news with this bill that they're trying to pass through right now, that there's gonna be a lot of Medicaid cuts. So this is what you're thinking, okay.
So some services like speech pathology and some others are reimbursable, quote unquote, through Medicaid. So when those go away, some of those services that are supported by that have to come out of some other operating rate category.
So the next slide captures some highlights. Enrollment is down, has been down for the last decade, but we do anticipate stability moving forward. It's challenging to predict, especially with the new developments that are in the offing, the timing of those new developments, how many students they'll actually generate, and the like. Our FTE is relatively stable from the prior year as it stands right now. And class sizes are expected to remain at the exact same number, which is 23. Overall, taxes will be dropping in 2026. Our portion of the tax bill will go down by roughly 10% in total over the last year and this year. I'm sure taxes will go up overall for the average Batavian, but our portion of the taxes will go down. And that we will pay off all of our bonds in 26, as I mentioned. At present, we have 96% of our bonding capacity available. We'll have 100% at the conclusion of this fiscal year. And that, just to be clear, we're gonna have to be really careful with the timing of warm, safe, dry. I don't think the scope of warm, safe, dry is much negotiable. These are things that we identify as being the barest of bare essentials that must get done. It's just a question of when we can afford to do so.
Tony, could you explain what bonding capacity is?
Yeah, every school district has a statutory debt limit, and it's calculated based off of your equalized assessed value or the taxable value of the property within your school district, and it's an equation. And so you can only you can only issue bonds or debt that you have at any given time up to 100% of that capacity. Otherwise, it requires an act of the General Assembly, the State Assembly, it lets you exceed it.
So that's a mechanism kind of to prevent someone from putting a question out for a building bond and saying, we want $1 billion, and then people vote yes, and then you exceed your bonding capacity.
Because, yeah, you could mislead the public, say, hey, I want $1 billion to do this, and then, yeah, that sounds great, but, that you could really put a community in peril by overtaxing them. That's to say that you can't overtax if you went to 100, any percentage of that, but it's considered, from a mathematical standpoint, beyond your means. This is kind of like, when you look at your gross income in your home, and maybe you're buying a car or a home, what is your relative debt limit? What you can afford to pay interest, your debt payments on, debt service on, given your income, kind of thing.
So tax rate dropping, but tax base is increasing, right?
Tax base is increasing, and the other part that's challenging to anticipate is how much will these developments increase our tax base? That's very challenging to predict, and especially with timing, but surely that will happen if these developments come to pass. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be adequate, it just means that there might be some additional money there. And I think that's the last line. Other questions?
Have you gotten any updates on the current development that's, by AC Storm?
By storm, no, I haven't heard anything lately.
I don't know if they're supposed to tell us, or,
In conversations with the city, and then sometimes we have incidental conversations with developers, they'll let us know, but I haven't asked lately, but it would be interesting to know. I know they have their models up at this point.
right,
Yeah.
I was curious.
The one on McKee seems to be, people are moving into that one. Like,
Yeah.
people are moving into the houses and stuff.
Yeah, the one on Winding Creek.
I don't know what the name is, but
Yeah,
on McKee Street.
yeah, on the other side of Randall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's almost done, actually. It's
Mhm.
almost built out.
Tony, is this the document, the preliminary budget, available for the budget review?
Yeah.
If so, where would they be able to?
So
look?
clarify, yeah, there's two documents. There's the official budget form that we have to submit to the state, and that's our official tentative budget. That's available it's attached to this agenda item. And then linked in the agenda item is also our budget summary, which also includes that new format that I'm proposing to use. And I'm hoping that it's more narrative rather than relying upon numbers, and that it provides more background and information, context to both the board and to the administration and to the community. So if you have any feedback on that document in particular, I would very much welcome it. I want to make sure that this document helps people understand the district's finances and understand how we allocate resources and the like. So would appreciate your feedback on that.
So real quick, right, because I know you said this was a proposal, and you're gonna have the next one in July, and so I'm just curious, you want the feedback, so the page 55, or you're determining are still under the development, couldn't you let us know when that one is done? Is
On
there-
page 55, I think you're talking about the metrics related to academic performance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I plan on having that done by the time we adopt the budget in August.
Okay.
What I'm gonna focus on in the next month is, one, I did get some feedback that we could probably do a better job of communicating where we are with warm, safe, dry, kind of the longer-term capital projects. I'm gonna incorporate that in there. And I'm also, Josh and I are gonna work on refining that forecast so that we can be certain, as reasonably certain as we can that that forecast is accurate. And those are gonna be the two priorities for the next month. So that if we need to make any adjustments to the budget, we will. And then some of the cosmetic stuff like that, which I think is important context, will build out by the time we get to the adoption in August, if that's fair. I also plan to put it on, moving it out of a Google Doc and putting it into a website, but that's taking a little bit more time than I expect, but that might, I'm hoping if we don't get that done this year, we'll get it done for next year. But hopefully that will make the interactivity of the document a little better. So just to be clear, this is just tentative, there is no action, but next month we'll hold a public hearing. The public is welcome and encouraged to come and share their thoughts on the budget. And then we will continue to make modifications to it until the time of adoption. That's all I have.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Tony. All right, we are now going to be adjourning to closed session. The board will go into closed session. We will have an action item after the closed session. You're welcome to stay if you like. If you decide to leave, we want to thank you for coming. The time is 7:47. I will entertain a motion to move to closed session.
So moved.
Motion by Katie, second by Danielle.
That was Raquel.
Oh, Raquel, okay. All right, Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Barrows,
Yes.
Gonzalez Thomas,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Arellano,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Sliger,
Yes.
Basicki,
Yes.
All right, thank you. We shall be back. The time is 8:16, and we have returned to open session. We'll now take the roll. Cindy, you want me to do it? I want you.
I got it. Arlando,
Here.
Garrels,
Here.
Gonzalez Thomas,
Present.
Hilbert,
Here.
Meadows,
Present.
Slider,
Present.
Swiseki.
Present.
Thank you. All right. Resolution, action item 8.1, resolution authorizing purchase agreement and due diligence for the 812 Main Street property. Tony, would you like to give us a brief summary?
Yeah. At present, the Board of Education owns the property at 804 Main Street, and under consideration is the purchase of the adjacent property of 812 Main Street. These properties were operated as one facility historically, and have been separate in their use for the past 10 or so years. With 812 Main Street coming for sale and its close proximity to 804, and its immediate proximity to 804, it's very challenging to operate these facilities independently. It includes access, traffic concerns through the property, and on 812, actually the water feed for the sprinkler systems at 804 are fed through the property at 812, so they're inseparable properties. So there's access issues, there's fire suppression issues, and we do lease portions of 812 for storage. We started doing that during COVID, and we use that pretty extensively. So we recommend that the board acquire, or at least give us authorization to do a purchase agreement and due diligence to acquire 812 Main Street for a total amount of $1,128,000.
Okay. Any questions? As everybody knows, there have been closed sessions about this topic. So I know we've gone back and forth, but we've decided to let Aaron kind of characterize and provide a summary of the thought process of it.
So we are gonna have a vote, and everyone's gonna vote with their conscience, but I just wanna communicate to the community that making a purchase of this size is always a difficult decision. You know, we just had a pretty robust discussion before closed session about the headwinds the district will be facing, and that we never enter into an agreement like this lightly. However, there are a number of factors that I will speak for me in this case, I believe makes it prudent for us to move forward with purchasing the property. One of them being that the property has been appraised for a little over $1.4 million, and the negotiated purchase price would be about $280,000 below that, so it's, in my opinion, a strong value. We're getting a lot of bang for our buck on our dollars. There would also be some strategic advantages beyond the purchase price, which would include securing permanent access and essential building systems for 804 Main, eliminating lease uncertainty and stabilizing long-term occupancy costs, expanding in-house fleet maintenance capabilities, consolidating core operations on a single contiguous site, so we'll have two buildings working in unison, and then also avoiding potential future capital costs related to the fire system infrastructure, as well as if someone else purchased the property, we would have to go and secure additional space, which is uncertain at the time where we would be able to acquire that space. So there are a variety of factors and pieces of information that the board has considered going into the decision, which again, I will only speak for myself. Everyone will have to vote their conscience, but I think for the long-term health of the district, it is financially prudent for the district to move forward with purchasing this property.
Everyone comfortable with that summary? So, okay, thank you. I will entertain a motion to adopt the attached resolution authorizing the superintendent or designee to execute a purchase agreement and advance due diligence. Activities related to the acquisition of 812 Main Street, Batavia, Illinois, subject to the terms outlined in the letter of intent and pending final review of legal, financial, and environmental matters.
So moved.
So moved by Raquel, second by?
Second.
Second by Katie. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Swiseki,
Yes.
Slider,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Gonzalez Thomas,
Yes.
Garrels,
Yes.
Arlandu,
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes. All right, item 8.2, curricular field test, elementary ELA. Brad?
Sure. So one of the biggest projects that we've worked on this year is really taking a look at our English language arts, our reading scores, and understanding the state's new Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan and what those impacts are for us. So we've had a group of staff, elementary staff and administrators who have spent 6 days learning together, making decisions about how to move the district forward. And then their recommendations go to CAC, but CAC is really interested in being a process manager and not necessarily making the decisions themselves, to make sure that the process that we've designed is followed. Because we really trust the people that are on these teams, that invest themselves in these subject area leadership teams. They've gone through that learning process, so CAC is involved, but really we're letting the ELA SALT team and the teachers that are a part of that lead the way. So they did extensive learning on the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. They did a gap analysis of where are we currently and what is that literacy plan asking us to do for our students. We determined at that point that there were a lot of gaps between where we're at now and where we want to go in terms of student instruction around reading at the elementary level. There were differing needs from like primary grades to intermediate needs, but we saw gaps in that. Because of that, they looked at different resources that would help us to fill those gaps and to have more comprehensive literacy instruction within our schools that aligns to more recent research. That team looked at a number of different resources. I think they looked at 5 in total and did our interviews of those vendors. They, as a team, decided to bring back 2 vendors for about 2.5 hours each. So they went through 2 products very extensively. They used a rubric that was designed by the state and then augmented by us to make sure it aligns with where we want to go and not just a feeling that we had. They were very good at that. I really appreciate the teachers using that rubric and using their expertise to help us make these decisions. They selected one product, Amplify CKLA, that they thought would be appropriate for a field test. We have purposely not used the word pilot because pilot's very confusing. We've had a lot of different ways that we've done pilots, and we said, all right, let's put all that behind us and really design a process. So CAC designed a process for doing field tests. The team, the ELA SALT team, just wants to field test the one product they feel most aligns with where we want to go as a district. This will be a change, I'm going to say fairly significant for our instructors at our elementary level and in the way that they teach reading. But I'm really excited about the potential progress that we're going to be able to make using this resource. That team met a couple of weeks ago here in June, the SALT team, and then CAC met after that last Friday. But the SALT team designed what this field test would look like, how many teachers would be involved in it. We really kept it tied to the ELA SALT team members themselves because they've gone through all of this training, this extra training, and then the teams that they're with, their grade level teams. We have representation from all grade levels in all but one school. So you'll see there that Hooverwood is not represented. So this is probably the best response that we've gotten to a SALT team because there's a lot of interest in what this is going to look like and teachers stepping up and leading the way and being a part of this team. So we really appreciate that. They made those decisions about doing a full year kind of trot field test, the data that they would collect, they've determined what that's going to look like, and they are excited to get going. But that would require an expenditure of about $80,000 to provide all of the materials that they're going to need to do this field test. There was one other product that we looked at more in depth. The team could have decided to try both. We said we need to be careful about expenses. The team decided they just want to try this one. It met the most criteria that they've come up with. So we're looking to have your authorization to spend $80,304 on the field test of Amplify CKLA 3rd edition.
All right, questions?
I have a couple questions.
Yep.
So where it says, like the Amplify CKLA, it says alignment gateway meets, usability gateway meets, foundational skills 75, or building knowledge. So what does, I just don't know, what does the foundational, the 75 out of 84, and then the building knowledge, the 178 out of 92? Like the other ones two say meets, so I don't know what do those bottom ones mean?
Yeah, one thing that has been really cool in education is you get a lot of these companies now, well, there's one big company that really looks at alignment to standards, right? So these are scores that we see in the literature around this particular product. So it's not just Batavia teachers who have said this seems to align. There's other companies out there that do testing of educational resources that are saying this meets that. So there were 84 points on foundational skills, 75 out of 84 they felt were met through that process. Building knowledge, 178 out of the 192 components or score that they give it was what they saw. So is it a perfect resource? Nope. And we've talked to the team extensively about that. There is no perfect resource. What teachers do is more than a resource. They are the experts. They bring a lot of expertise. They know their kids. They know pedagogy. So to me, their instruction is the best thing that we can do, but I want to support them with a resource that really matches that at the level that they want to go.
And then, I guess, two questions is, one, the ISB curriculum evaluation tool, has that been out there a while, and do we use it consistently if it's been out there?
One of the nice things that the state has done with this particular initiative is they've put a lot of resources out there very quickly. So the comprehensive literacy plan is probably 18 months, maybe 18 months old. And usually the pattern would be they would launch a document like this, and then it would be 3 or 4 years before we had resources. They really flooded the zone with these resources, including that rubric to help districts in this process of aligning their curriculum to the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy. Now, if you look out on social media, you will see they call them the reading war. So there's lots of different opinions on how we should be doing reading, right? So this has shifted over time, but there's always been these like sways of the pendulum back and forth. And I really appreciate the state kind of stepping in and saying, no, we had so many stakeholders involved, and they're not on one side or another. They're more towards the science of reading side than they were previously, but they're kind of in a good stasis. We're still far away from where Batavia is at, but they have come to a middle ground, which has given us kind of a guiding light, and they've provided these resources. They have actually really good modules to teach teachers about the comprehensive literacy plan. So if teachers are watching and they want to spend, about 8 to 12 hours watching webinars, there's actually pretty good ones online to help learn about the comprehensive literacy plan. But we're going to do our own PD for our elementary teachers. Again, we're going to keep the field test for a smaller group of people, and at the same time be training all of our staff about what is comprehensive literacy plan looks like, what is that, how is that different than your current instruction within your classroom, how are the materials going to impact your classroom. One of the things that's really going to be interesting to watch is that CKLA only gives grade level text. So you just authorized the purchase of an $80,000 software tool that if I'm at this grade level, that's great, it gives me that text. But if I'm below grade level, it gives me a different text at my grade level. So this is where all kids are getting the same high quality resource, and we have to scaffold and bring all kids up to that standard. It's really about the team was really excited about the high expectations this is going to have for our students.
And, for the classrooms that are gonna use this resource, are we then expecting the students to meet or exceed that school's goal? It's like how they just did the presentations last week, you know, are we expecting them to see an, I guess, an uptick in those?
Yeah, and I think that would be our long-term goal. So again, I typically look over about 3 years. We might see a little implementation dip, right? We're trying this, it's new for us. Our students may not be used to being exposed to grade level text. So we might see an implementation dip, but I think our students and our teachers have the ability to really show a lot of progress with this tool. It will be something that we're monitoring.
This is for a year, you said, right?
Yeah, they're gonna pilot. There is the option because of cycles here that we may start to introduce more teachers later on in the school year. Once these teachers have said, yeah, this works, or here are some of the challenges, and we can plan for some of those challenges. We didn't want to roll it out too quickly and overwhelm teachers. There's always a process of getting used to it. There's a lot of materials that are going to be in these teachers' classrooms too. So like even going through all the boxes and stuff like that, it's going to be a challenge. So one of the reasons we're bringing this, you know, they just met a couple of weeks ago, and I would typically wait till July, was because we have staff here in the summer that can help organize some of these materials for the pilot classrooms. So that when a teacher gets back in August.
Field test.
Field test, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's gonna be a hard habit to break. The teachers in the field test are ready to go, that we have those materials organized for them.
So they have actual like workbooks and so forth too?
Workbooks, books, yep, lots of texts will be in the hands of kids.
It's a combination of digital and,
Yeah, both.
and in hand.
So if this field test is successful, I mean, obviously you kind of said it now, you roll it out maybe 6 months if it's successful. And I just don't know, do we need anything in like the middle school, or are we good at the middle school?
Next year, part of the CAC work will be looking at middle school and high school. We did all of the learning together about this, but there were completely separate needs. The elementary was ready to go because they were dissatisfied with their current resources, so we focused on that with this team, but we have secondary people who are going to be investigating what this looks like at their level as well. So I anticipate changes at the secondary level, I just don't know what those are yet.
Brad, could you explain who's on the Salttown team? What's the population that comprises that team?
Right, so you can see the SALT team members there in that third column. So we have kindergarten representation, each of the grade levels, we have 2 second grades because there was a lot of interest there. Second grade is really a tipping point in reading, right? So primary teachers are very into teaching reading, that's their comfort zone. But when you get to second and third grade, you start to go from teaching reading to learn. And so we got a lot of interest there at the second grade level. So those are the teachers that have been a part of all of the learning. And then they are facilitated by a consultant that we use, and then Jen Hicks, and then an elementary principal who is Mike Wall from Louise White. So those are the administrators that sit on that team as well. And then they're gonna bring along their teams that wanna be a part of this. 22 people.
You have more questions? I don't want to cut you off. if
I'm
you're-
done.
So my comments would be, I will say on my time as a board member that I have had people come up to me with concerns about our ELA curriculum at the grade school level. So I'm excited that we're looking at it and maybe going on a new path there. And what I like about it is this is collaborative with our teachers, because when change is hard, and if our teachers and our teams out in the buildings are not enthusiastic about giving this 100%, it will not succeed. So these individuals listed on the slide, I want to thank them, because this is going to, I assume, mean a lot more work for them that they're volunteering for them, rather than just the status quo that some of these people have been doing for years and years. So I appreciate them going above and beyond to work with this field test. And I also want to point out that implementation of this would align with one of our strategic plan goals, enhancing teaching and learning practices. So this is how it's supposed to work. We have a goal, and now we're implementing processes and programs to help us achieve those plans. I guess my question is 80,000, again, every penny now that we're spending, we have to really scrutinize. So walk me through this. At the end of the year, we spend the $80,304 and, is it like a pass-fail, we're not, or is it like, it's mostly good, we can modify some things?
And that's really where we've tripped up before. So mistakes we made in before is like we say, all right, we'll try this out, right, we'll pilot this. And then people are like, yeah, I don't like it. Or, we're paying a lot for that, it doesn't do exactly what I need. There is no perfect product out there. So we went through an extensive kind of process as a CAC team saying, all right, how should this look? So people don't feel burned or that their voice wasn't heard as a part of this process. So they designed this field test process where the SALT team gets to make a lot more of the decisions that CAC used to make or I used to make with my team. So it's really putting in the hands of these teachers as to what this looks like, what data is collected, how much time we're going to ask of these people. They have had extensive discussions about all of these pieces, which to me is great, because you're right, Aaron. If the teachers aren't bought into this, there's no point, right? So they have to be a part of this. And not everyone, when we roll this out district-wide, not everyone might be happy with this. So as teachers, they're also saying like, no, we think this is the right way to go. So to me, this is a great example of teacher leadership and them putting their voice out there when their colleagues may not be happy with it. But we're really trying to plan for those eventualities. So we used to kind of say, no, we'll ditch it, and then we'd have to start these processes all over again. It was a lot of time. We think that this is the right product. We've been super extensive with that, and we want to see how we can make it work in Batavia. So is it a 100% deal? No. But we're pretty confident this is the direction that we need to go.
Along those lines, Brad, what is the criteria for success? How are we gonna determine at the end of this field test that this is the direction we wanna go?
They, I don't know if I put it in here or not, and if not, I can. So I just put it very succinctly. So they're going to do focus groups with the students that are experiencing this. They're looking to survey those teachers throughout this field test period. We're going to do some beginning of the year benchmark assessments, so things that we don't normally do to kind of see where students are and then where they might end up. We're going to continue to use that evaluation tool. And then the team is going to look at student work samples and observational data. So
So this is at the end of the school year?
this
will
is
be done.
throughout the field test period. So we believe we will have a lot of data by mid-year, by December, in order to make some further decisions. It would be nice for us to know the decision, to have a plan to move forward mid-year so we can start that process, because we have institute days, we have time with our staff, more in second semester than we do in first semester. So it'd be good to get a jump on some of that learning that teachers are gonna need to start to implement.
And then out of that, ultimately, the SALT team will say, this is our recommendation.
Yep.
Okay.
They're gonna look at all that data, and I appreciate them not relying on standardized assessments in this, because those aren't gonna measure how quickly this is gonna be implemented in the field test. So them taking a look at student work samples through talking to kids, I think is the right move for them. They didn't consult me, but I think they made the right decision. Because it's gonna be more sensitive to the actual implementation.
So the 80,000 is for the field test materials, if at the end of whatever period they choose and they're like, yes, this is what we want, then
We'll have a bigger purchase to have
to
all
roll
the
it out
teachers.
to all
yeah.
the.
700,000?
Which that number's in the budget, I
600 to
think.
700,000, yes. So.
I think, is that correct, Tony? In your document, I believe there was a number listed that,
Yeah,
There was a big number in there.
There was,
Tony's,
words too.
Tony's like, I thought I was done.
We do have an amount budgeted for this if it is successful in this year.
Sorry. Give him a
It's in the
little- there you go,
narrative
Kristen.
document.
Yeah. I'm just saying it's in the, it's planned.
It's,
Plan for, but it's a lot.
yeah.
It's a lot, yeah, it's a lot of money. So if this works to our, you know, this, even in exceeds our expectations, like could be the impact for our kids? How does this help Batavia students, BPS 101 students?
Tomorrow, you're gonna get a look at some of our data, and with math, we're doing gangbusters. I'm just gonna give you a little sneak peek there. Because we've had a good resource, a solid resource aligned to the standards, and our teachers have had a couple of years to implement that. So now we're seeing a very upward trend. I know our staff, and I know that if we get them the right resources and the right training, we're gonna see the same thing. Because right now, we're not seeing that. Our teachers are working really hard and we're kind of stagnant, which I'm sure for them and for me and for our community is frustrating. So I want to empower them with these resources so that we can see that upward trend.
So really quick too, sorry. If this is successful and, you know, so next year we're sitting here and you say, we wanna do this for everything. That could also potentially though, maybe remove some of the resources that we're currently using right now.
Yep.
So we're not spending maybe money on this because we're gonna be implementing this. Do we know, do you have an idea about how many, if successful, how many resources we would maybe not renew?
Well, in my mind, that 80,000 that you just approved would not be on the list because there would be other things that come with this product that would probably be better and more aligned. The problem is I've continued to spend money on old resources up until this current year because we would add a classroom, right? So like, hey, we're gonna add a new kindergarten section at AGS. Well, the board's paying for the teacher, but we're also outfitting that classroom with those materials. So even a resource I knew we were gonna get rid of, I was still spending $4,000 to $5,000 per classroom just so they had materials. So to me, it stops wasteful spending and can get us on the right track.
Any other questions? Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the expenditure of $80,304 for field test to amplify CKLA third edition.
So moved.
So moved by Danielle, second by, I
Second,
think that was Kristen.
yes.
All right, Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Gilbert,
Yes.
Gonzalez Thomas,
Yes.
Garrels,
Yes.
Garlandu,
Yes.
Meadows,
Yes.
Swasicki,
Yes.
Sliger,
Yes.
Thank you, motion passes. All right, next is item 8.3, approve updated board agreements, board meeting requests, decision tree, and board and superintendent communications relations document. Tom, will you lead us on this?
Yeah, so, on behalf of the board, I created this agenda item so that you all could have this conversation. And just for public record, we met on June 10th, went to closed session for the board's self-evaluation workshop. And out of that workshop, we did have several things that were agreed upon by the board. We had some things that were still left for further discussion. And then we had a few items that were left that did not get discussed or addressed yet, right? And so I think we wanted to make sure that we had space to talk about that. We did get our notes from our field trainer from the IASB, confirming some of those items. So what was fully approved, I went ahead and put that into the motion for action tonight, per her recommendations. And then everything else is up to you for discussion. And so really, you know, it's a good opportunity for you to kind of, I don't know, as a board, look at what you want to continue. You know, do you want another meeting? You know, again, that's something that Cindy and I will work on if the board kind of tonight has a consensus that they'd like to look at another workshop to be scheduled, to continue the discussions. Yeah, so it's a pretty open place there for you. If the motion needs to be amended to include something that may have been not included that came, I did go from Laura's notes. So, but if there's something there, we could make an amendment to the original motion. So, space for you to talk.
So there's three different components to it. One of them is the action that's before us on those particular items. One of them is, really, do we feel like it's another session within the bounds of whatever the state and laws and her availability allows us to do? And then third is to kind of touch on a couple of the items that we didn't get to or feel, because that might be related to meeting with her again, or B, that we felt at the end of the meeting would be reasonable to have an open session discussion as opposed to really fall within the boundaries of the closed session. So those are three different, it's the way I see three different components of what's before us for discussion. So, do you want to kind of save the motion part for last? Or do you wanna move on to that and then we can kinda talk about the other things first?
I'd rather do the motion first,
Okay,
just get that out of the way.
yep, that's fine. So does anybody have any comments or questions in regard to the decision tree, the board and communications, and relations document? Okay. All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve the updated board agreements, board meetings request decision tree, and board and superintendent communications and relations documents as discussed at the June 10th, 2025 board self-evaluation workshop. So moved by Raquel,
Second.
second by Rob. Cindy, please lead us in a roll call vote.
Sisiki,
Yes.
Arlandu,
Yes.
Garros,
Yes.
Sliger,
Yes.
Kilburg,
Yes,
Meadows,
Yes.
Gonzalez Thomas.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, so item number 2 on that list, I guess, is do we feel that it would be good to reach back out to Laura to see if there's another session of something similar to kind of continue the discussion of things that might be more board evaluation related?
I would enjoy another workshop. I think that would be productive for the board to have one. So I would be in favor of that.
Okay.
Do we have any sense for how long that would take?
No, we can find out from her, and then we will try to find we'll do it as a special meeting so that we don't have people sitting here and waiting, that sort of thing. So we'll do it as a part of one of the things we discussed, which is try to target when we think these special meetings might occur, and those would be on non-regular board days, right? So I think that makes sense.
So I think like, if we're talking about committees, who's going on committees, are we doing committees? That would need to be done sooner rather than
Yeah, and I think
later.
that's more of an open, that's
Okay.
one of my things that of the ones right now, I think that's one of them that we felt could be an open.
Could be
Like, we could,
Right,
if everybody felt like we had time, we could kind of have that discussion and give me some direction so that I know this is how we want to proceed on that and a couple of these other topics, so.
Was there anything on the agenda that was originally on the agenda? Because I know not everything is listed here. There's a couple missing things that was on our agenda going into the workshop that would need to be closed session, really. I'm trying to,
If you can help me remember those, I'd appreciate it.
it was your email, I think, is what it was.
Tom's looking too, so.
Okay.
I knew someone was gonna ask, and I didn't have it.
Board workshop, okay. We had, polling and getting items onto the agenda, our meeting dates,
Meeting dates. those-
right, like if we wanna move it to a different day, Pledge of Allegiance,
I think we resolved.
resolved
that.
yeah. Clarity around board direction, action items, consensus, and I know that we don't have anything about the action items or any kind of like to-do list that's listed in this
Okay.
agenda, but we did kind of talk about it. Board officer term length,
That was one of the items I mentioned earlier.
for what?
I think I mentioned it, so. let's
Oh,
see.
okay.
Yeah.
Board member school assignments, which I think is on here, committee assignments, and then board matters effectiveness, which obviously we have, taken off. So, I mean, all those seem to be, to me, based on what we talked about with her, things that we can talk about in an open session, right? In our closed session, what do you feel like, maybe just so we can talk about like our group, like how we're working together? more
dynamic
of it.
kind of stuff.
Yeah,
yeah, that would be type of things, yeah.
yeah,
I think there was general, at least, and some of the impressions and discussions I've had with people as they called me on the board was we kind of got there, but we didn't quite like resolve it or kind of get into a real
Yeah.
open conversation about it at the end. We kind of started hitting at it, but didn't quite get all the way there.
and it seemed like Laura and our kind of feelings seemed to be, at least what I took from it, is we can talk about it in open session. It seemed like none of these would have to be closed.
Yeah, the group dynamic and how we work together, definitely close thing.
Yeah.
These other things, I
Yeah.
think one is to talk about them all today. Two is to, and somewhere in between, is to just say, yes, I wanna talk about it, please put those on a future board item so that we can talk about those at a board agenda item in the future, right?
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting we have to do either, I'm not suggesting it's an all or none, it could be, like the committee one, I'm just gonna pick that one right now, for like, the committee one, what I generally heard was people liked being on the committees, they wanted to be on the committees, there was a little bit of a recognition that maybe not all committees need a board member on them for every level. So that I think if you guys are okay, I can work with Tom to try to just bring that out and say, okay, this is it. And then we can kind of look at who might be best fit for that, or make sure that there's coverage one way or the other for that.
The only thing I have with that is, I'll just say, like, let's say like we decide that we don't need anyone on RAC.
Yeah,
I don't want RAC to feel slighted
that's fair.
because we're not there.
Mhm.
I just wanna make sure, like, if you take us away from a committee, they are okay with it. But if they would rather have a board member, I don't want them to feel.
No, that's actually a really good point. I think a part of what we could do, just to react to that a bit, is to reach out to find out how they feel board members impact their ability to make good decisions, right? Like if they feel, okay, we do good work and we would like, some parameters about board members, like there's some committees that maybe you should have been a board member for a couple of years so that you can get your feet and understand, Tony's lingo, on RAC or whatnot, then maybe that's kind of, so we can reach out to them to kind of get some general opinions about whether they feel that it's been particularly helpful with the kind of the new format of the notes on that, and then Tom can give an input, because they are effectively, just to be clear for people watching on TV, there's two types of committees. There's board committees, which is, the only one we have is the policy committee, that's a regularly meeting one, and then the other ones are superintendent committees that are advisory for us, that we sit on at our discretion effectively. But it's a good point, so if everybody's head nodding, we can touch base with those committees to make sure that they feel we're effective positions there.
So what we're saying is we're gonna reach out to all those committees. Do you like having a board member, or we're gonna get feedback on if it brings value? And then that will be presented back to us, and then we'll have an open discussion about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we don't want these things to linger too long, if it starts to get like,
No.
yes, I think it is, then we'll just get somebody assigned to that.
Well, it'd probably be good to, because most of them ramp up when the school year starts, so we wanna have it.
Okay.
You think their answer to, do you like to have a board member on there, is gonna be no?
I mean, they might be like, yeah, they're,
I don't think so. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, you think it's sort of a loaded question?
To Rob's-
Yeah, I think it's a loaded question.
It's fair.
That's a good question, Rob, and I think that ties to what Raquel's saying, but I'm gonna flip it. Let's make sure you don't feel bad if they say it. Are you gonna be okay? As a
That's a
board.
good point, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's twofold, right? One of them is, there's a number of committees, and we all have limited time, because everybody else other than us is effectively being paid to be on that committee and has the time allocated for said committee. And we were getting to the point where it was 2, if not 3 committees were being assigned per board member to do that. And that's why we came up with like BIC BIC I think is a good one for a board member to be on, and that's why BIC, this year was a change that, Tom, about starting to circulate board members through that instead of having a single board member that was at every meeting. So that they got an opportunity, and everybody here got an opportunity to kind of see what BIC was like. And that meant quarterly.
Quarterly, and I thought all of you
So we
that
can get through
participated did a
everybody?
great job.
Yeah.
I think they appreciated having you there.
Okay.
We got the committees down. What's next?
Yeah, committee's down. All right. School
School assignments?
school assignments. So for everybody watching at home, historically, board members have been assigned to a specific school. Only rule was you couldn't be assigned to a school that your kids are at.
So, I'll share, I've thought about this a lot. I was kind of thinking 2 ways we could do it, well, 3 ways. We could do it the traditional way we've done it, where everybody gets assigned to school. We've discussed that everybody gets invited to everything, and then we'd have to figure out a way to manage that, because that would be a lot of invitations maybe. We talked about the vice president, I've talked about it, but then I was like, well, boy, what did I sign up for, because that would be a lot of volume. But we would figure out a way to do that, so it'd be manageable. And then the third way I thought, and this, I'm spitballing here, but maybe, because traditionally, the president isn't assigned a building and everybody else gets assigned a building. Well, I guess that wouldn't work. No, it would. That maybe the rest of the board members get assigned a grade school, and then everybody gets invited to middle school and high school events, because everything matriculates up to that.
Interesting.
So that would be
idea.
like a third option. That makes sense.
Yeah. You have 6th grade schools?
Yeah, so it would work.
So there has been some discussion on this with Drew and them at the kind of the occasional meetings we have. One, I think if there's assignment, and this is not a pro or con or any judgment about an idea, is that if we're assigned to that, there has been kind of commentary that some board members are able to get to their elementary schools, some of them aren't able to get to their elementary schools. Then how does that kind of give the impression of who's, good board member, bad board member, time involved, everything else? So that's one consideration in total, but I'm not saying it actually, that's a really interesting logic there of being able to kind of assign everybody but the president to one, and then everybody kind of gets picked up. The other thing that was discussed at those is there's generally speaking at the beginning of the year, there's kind of a calendar of events that are kind of known that are gonna be kind of at that level, and this doesn't prevent anyone from saying, hey, I would like to go read to a classroom, we can work through that, but it's intended to be, hey, these are board level, like, it's the middle school, Veterans Day event, and we just make sure that we have coverage of somebody going to those.
And, like, one way we could do that, if everybody got the calendars, Tom and his updates could sort of highlight, like, hey, these are some bigger things, like the Veterans Day, or like, just some bigger things that are bigger that, hey, this is on your calendar, just look at this is pretty cool. It'd be up to your discretion, but you already kind of do that a little bit. So that would be a way to manage maybe that. My fear is it's like a fire hose coming at you, and it's like, oh, I got 20 invites every week to go to. It could feel a little overwhelming, but maybe we see and it's not that bad. It wouldn't be that big a deal. I don't know.
For me, sometimes how I determine what to make sure I put in your kind of headspace, right, with my updates, is when I get an invitation where they're like, hey, it's kind of a marquee event for us, we'd love to see you there. And then I think like, all right, let me put that out to the board as well, in the event that someone's free and you want to attend that, right? Like the joint BEA, Best Bud, and Admin end of year retirement celebration and service awards, and I put that on the calendar in the weekly updates just because, that's a nice little end of year marquee event, and if you're available and would like to join, everybody there would love to see you there, and it was kind of like, that makes sense, right? So, a weekly reading event, probably not. They may want to invite board members to come and read if you want, which is cool, but it's not maybe something I would say like, hey, attention everybody. Anyway, I'm struggling with this.
The negative thing about assigning elementary schools, as a new board member, there are elementary schools that I've never stepped foot inside, that I've never seen. And it would be nice to see them all. And if I'm assigned to one, then I'm probably not gonna be going to the others.
And it is hard, I'll say, as a parent of elementary kiddo, I wasn't able to go like Louise White to their first day thing for most of their stuff fell on days that I was going to my kids' stuff. And so I do love the idea of us sharing, the ability to visit, or I guess I could, if we open it up to say, hey, if I can't go, let the board know. Do we feel like, I think the school admin would be able to use their discrepancy to say, I'm not gonna invite them to everything, but they can you know what I mean? I feel like they're capable of not overwhelming us to just be invite. Maybe I'm wrong. But I feel like I have trust there that we're not gonna get, it's gonna be a lot altogether, but I don't know, I like the idea of your third idea a bit, but then I get worried about still the coverage. I kind of like the idea of just, we're all in the know, and if a couple of us can go to one thing, cool. If one of us goes, we just kind of make sure for the big things that we have at least one person.
I'm kind of leaning towards everybody, let's try for a year, everybody getting invited to everything, because I will say, so I've been a board member for 4 years, and I've been on both sides of the river. when you get to go to different buildings, if you go enough times, you get to understand the cultures a little bit, and you realize how diverse our community is, and the challenges and needs, and so it makes you sort of think about the district, not as a, you just understand like it's pretty complex, because different people need different things. So I think there is an advantage to your point of getting more exposure across the district. And, you know, we just have to figure out the mechanism. But I don't think that would be a logistical thing that we could figure out pretty easy, I think. Be a little bit of a learning curve, but we'd get up to speed pretty quick, I think.
It sounds like we're all interested in attending as many things as we can, right? So I think it would probably all shake out in the end if we did it that way.
Okay. So I think what just needs to be fleshed out is looking at if there's like a district or board calendar that people would get kind of invited to, and then to manage time, like, since you brought it up as a vice president kind of role thing, is to just make sure there's coverage. Like, hey, guys, we don't have anybody for this particular one, and I don't know the social calendar on everybody here, but sometimes you go to things and I'm like, daggone it, I wish I'd known about that.
Right.
You know, and then, because you tend to go to a lot of those type of events, you know.
So my instinct would be probably then, maybe collaborating with Tom, like he's saying, like the things that are like a little higher level, like maybe, and it might just be Tom, just like, let's give a little shout out, so. I know we're busy, but hey, you know, if you can, even if you're just popping in for a half hour, this might be of interest. Does that sound good?
And some events, maybe just one person, but there might be others that more people could attend, like the event that you suggested.
Well, and there'll be events where Danielle's kids are there, so she'll be there already probably.
Right,
You
right.
know, and so if we show up, it's just, it is what it is, right?
Right, I don't think it's the end of the world if we can't do every single 100%, right, but like the goal is obviously.
I will say right now, I will not be at 100% of the events, so.
No, not you personally, but it's a collective
Oh, yeah,
Right,
whole,
yeah.
not you.
No, I think there's definitely recognition that everyone has lives of their own to live out, right? And so that's I think a fair.
Like, you look at it, if you're the person assigned to the high school,
Every night.
one's mentality, like, they're probably, the high school's got 90% of the events, or, you know, 60,
Yeah.
70, 80% of the events that you have to go to. You don't have to go to, but then, like, you feel that burden's on your shoulders to go to those things, and you're not going there anyway, because you couldn't be assigned to the school if you had kids in the school, so therefore, in my head, this is a way to be able to kind of make sure that there is coverage, because then, like you said, Danielle, kind of gets spread amongst all of us to make sure that someone tries to make it to that event. Which maybe then, it's kind of like there's like this tier event that, like, we want to make sure there's coverage, and these would be the nice twos, and maybe we can start creeping into those a little bit, so. Okay, so what I am hearing is that we are going to shift our, whatever it is, procedure, it's not a policy, but a procedure on, school assignments. And so that you can work, you, Tom, and I can work together
Yeah,
on
and
figuring out
then
the
the next meeting,
mechanism.
maybe we can kind of present a preliminary idea of what we think it might look like to everybody else. Is that acceptable?
Okay. All right, is everybody good trying to turn through the other, at least the other two items? There's three, there's the to-do list too.
Yeah, that would be like actually a really good example to go into the to-do list is, if we had a to-do list, we could add that item of next board meeting, hopefully introduce some sort of mechanism.
Okay.
I mean, if not, things just fall off, obviously. Not intentionally, but, so I don't know if do you guys wanna talk about that? I think we talked a little bit about it.
I don't have a problem with talking about it.
Well, let's just do this. I mean, who wants an action item list after every meeting? I mean, not that we can take a vote, but yeah, we kind of, I think everybody wants it. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
maybe the consensus.
I think, yeah, we would all.
So who maintains that list? Is that a board position, like an officer that maintains it? Is that?
Shouldn't it be, maybe,
I mean,
if she's okay with it, the secretary?
I'm putting it out there for discussion without
Yeah.
volunteering.
no,
Katie.
I think it would make sense, and I'm happy to do just kind of an ongoing action items thing. I'd also be happy to organize letting everybody know about events and stuff like that too. I'd be happy to help with that, if that's helpful.
Let's
but
try
yeah.
it with, let's split the fun a little bit, and
Okay.
we'll let Aaron try the event thing for a
Okay.
while, and if he needs to call an audible to have
Okay.
have you help,
I'm-
he's got you
I
as
will
his backup.
volunteer. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can maintain an action items, or just really follow up, I guess. from-
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, right? So that brings up one of the other things we kind of talked about. What comes with an action item list is being very clear about what everybody wants and what everybody needs. So for example, on this, does everybody feel that, yes, it would be good for Aaron to bring back? Because I also want to be clear that we're trying, this is some of our board work, not necessarily their work, per se. They may be a resource for Aaron and whatever, so Aaron would kind of bring back as a part of one of his comments or board comments that, kind of to talk about that item. Make sense?
So if we do an action item, I'm just talking out loud, so then we have to agree on the action and the timeline for the deliverable.
Correct.
And that is something where I think sometimes in some meetings, we've left and I think we've had different understandings of what was talked about. So I don't know if like Katie, after a meeting, if there's so many days following everyone, I don't know if we're gonna have like a Word document, but something where all of us can look at it and say, yeah, that is my understanding. And if not, we can then talk to Craig, talk to Tom, and be like, hey, I thought it would meant this. Because there's been instances that I think that would have been really helpful and would have stopped misunderstandings. So I don't know if it's just to try to be clear in the moment, and also all of us have that ability to review it, just to ensure it's what we did understand. And if not, then we have the ability to ask some questions.
So counterpoint a bit for discussion purposes. We have our meeting minutes and our meeting notes. I'm not saying we change anything, I'm just bringing it up. That has the, generally speaking, the context of the discussion, and that, you could go back and look at your reminders, as it were, right, at that. So do we need a separate document when we have them commented that way? I'm hoping, in answer to the other question about is it clear, that having kind of Katie kind of keep a record of that and kind of then looking at the meeting minutes and confirming
It would be
that
kind
this
of-
is what we understood, and if there's a discrepancy, she would reach back out to me and to Tom to say, this is unclear to people,
Yeah.
you know?
So you're saying for us to review the meeting minutes?
No.
I mean,
Katie
we're
would.
supposed, but what if Katie's understanding of what we talked about was not the same as my do you know what I mean? Like, that's still accounting for her to understand an action item only. Am I not hearing that?
I'm
think I
listening and processing here. You know, Cindy takes what is the board's official minutes and submits them to the, she is our record keeper and archive person. The minutes are reviewed with Katie prior to coming to a board meeting, so that there's a common understanding. So that could be a natural relationship of teaming up together to confirm those. And I think to your, Danielle, your point is, but if amongst board, there's still a little bit of that misunderstanding, right? You're saying, even though if the minutes line up with what Katie's tracking and that's all aligned, you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, amongst the board, people still may have some misunderstanding.
Communication is hard, and we're counting on this large group of people to communicate in a way that every person here understands. It's flawed to just say it's on one person, two people, and their perspectives of what they heard. Cindy's taking a lot of notes, great notes in that, and she's gonna read it. But again, that's all accounting for, hopefully they understood my communication. I know my communication isn't always heard correctly or is not clear all the time. And so I guess personally, I don't see why we wouldn't have every board member have that ability to say, yeah, that's what I understood too, or not even to have to verify it, but bring up a question about it. I would love us to make sure that we're all on the same page all the time.
Maybe after Cindy, I'll keep during meetings an action item, like I'll be listening for that, like, right? Like, okay, that's something that we need to follow up on. And then after Cindy sends me the minutes and I've reviewed that and I make sure that jibes, I can send, right, to the board, like, okay, and then I think this was what we agreed were our
Okay.
outstanding items,
Right.
right? So after each meeting.
Because at that point, everything seems to jive.
Right,
up
and then I'm
it's-
looking at the minutes and I'm making sure I'm not repeating or whatever.
Right, about what's the timeline that she usually
Few
gives?
days.
Few days, so
Yeah.
that happens pretty early
Yeah.
in that process.
Yeah.
So then what keeps that, I guess my follow-up to that is, what keeps us as a board from not getting we're all busy, right? And we're like on to the next thing, on to the next thing, to ensure, where's our accountability piece on that? Are you going to be looking at that every meeting? Are we looking at it? Because we can have that list, but if we're not actually like reviewing it and looking back at it, we're just gonna have an action item list that actually has nothing holding us to that. So how are we ensuring? Who's ensuring?
Well, can it be added to the agenda? As, hey, you know, like just one of the bullet points, a review, like review action item list, or whatever we wanna call it.
Or
And we just-
emailed a couple days after the meeting, so that we can all look at it.
That's what I was kind of wondering, is that when, that's what what I think Katie was suggesting, is then
Yeah.
it kind of goes out and says, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
Of that, this is our kind of agreed upon moment, and then if there's some confusion, everybody has a chance to do that, and then
Right.
additionally, if there's something assigned to a particular person, then Katie could follow up with them and say, hey, are you gonna be prepared for this at the next meeting?
So I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Sometimes those items might not be for the next meeting, it might be
It could
for
be
3
3
months.
months from now.
Just so
To
that
keep it
prevents
on
things from falling
everybody's,
through the cracks too.
yeah.
Are
And you're
you-
reading it and you're saying, you know, hopefully everybody's done opening it at some point and going, okay, I'm perusing through this and seeing.
So it's like an ongoing document?
Yeah.
So we can
That
just.
she might float it on her side, and you're asking, is that something everybody can look at?
Yeah, so
It's
like
fine
if,
with
if
me,
it's a
yeah,
week
if you
before
want.
the meeting and I'm like, do I need to do anything as part of that? I can open that document and be able to see it.
So my thought would be, because now I have a deliverable for the next meeting, like, I would want feedback relatively early in the process, because I'm delivering something, and I was under the understanding I was gonna deliver something. And then Monday, I get an email saying, no, that's not what the board thinks you were supposed to do. I might not have enough time to be responsive to deliver.
Yeah.
So I would say, my thing would be, because most of the communications we get are kind of on a regular basis, so we can anticipate them. So I'm not trying to put pressure on you and Cindy, but like, it would probably be better if we're gonna do that, that it came out like, if we have a meeting on a Tuesday, like, by that Friday or the following Monday, well, the meeting's still kind of fresh in our minds, that we would have it, that way, whoever's got the deliverable, before they go down a path, if there needs to be a course correction, they have enough time to either get it done or say, just so you know, now that I understand, I'm gonna need more time, and that deliverable, which I thought I could do now, needs to be pushed out another month or something.
Sure, yeah.
Because I know some, we're busy, sometimes, you need time to react to it if you're doing it.
100%, and I probably won't be 100%, no, I know I won't be 100% consistent getting them immediately out, right? But that's why it's there, so that if once in a while I'm like, oh, wait, here, I forgot to send you this, or.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about like it coming out like Monday night, and then
Yeah.
it's like,
I don't see it as something that's like, do this now, or, right? Like, it's just sort of like, these are our outstanding, right? Like, I don't know, I don't feel like there's an urgency
does that
attached to
understand
it
what I'm saying?
necessarily.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Steve.
I do, and if I can just hone in a little bit on some of the training principles.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be an exhaustive list, because you're a governing board.
We're not
Like-
supposed to do too much.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're there and governing and monitoring, having conversation and discussion, but, like, it's our work to do the presentation tomorrow night, not your job,
Right.
right? Like, that's not your work. Your work is to listen, process,
Right,
ask
and just go, "Oh, I
questions,
heard." Yep,
right?
and write it down. Yep.
And so to me, it's like, I wouldn't, personally, if this list is getting too exhaustive and overwhelming for the board, I think we gotta huddle up again and talk a
Agreed.
little bit about
Agreed.
There's probably
what
something
you're all
structurally
doing.
wrong
Agreed.
with what's going on.
I think it's more moving, and like where my point of view, and we've talked about this, is there's been a couple of things that I know that have not happened, that I've asked to happen, right? And I feel like having a list would help that. Instead of it just being on one person to just kind of like follow up, and, I just feel like whether it's something that we've talked about tasking admin with Tom, well, we only task you, Tom with. It's something for us to remember too, like, oh yeah, we asked for that, and, if we have questions or if we need to add it into an agenda to talk about it or whatever, we're making sure we're doing that to be an effective board.
Yeah, I think the list, I don't think anybody's, at least I'm not, disagreeing about the list. I think the topic, because I think we decided that a list is gonna get kept, and Katie's gonna keep a list, right? And that's whether that's internal to the board, or that's a direction to Tom about something we as a board are asking him to do, right?
Well, you guys were saying the list was for our
Yeah,
items,
yeah,
so I
yeah,
was just
right,
adding that in for other parts of it.
Okay, okay. So
Yep.
then, I think what I'm asking is, the real question is, does this list persist for anybody to be able to look at at any point in time henceforward? Right, so it's like a Google Doc of some sort.
That's what I think it should.
I think
it
that's
should be a
fine.
I think it should be a Google Doc.
Yeah.
And this shared with us. So let's say I'm tasked with something, right? And, you know, so I put in my comment like, hey, I have the slide ready to go next
See-
board meeting. So then you guys know, okay, hey, she's ready. Or if I had something come up, hey, guys, I'm gonna have to push this out.
Yeah.
I just put the comment
Then it's
in
there.
a section.
So we have to be careful, and this is what I'm gonna
Right.
ask about, is we should check with our attorney
Yes.
about the inadvertently having a board meeting through a board doc.
Right.
You know,
Oh, yeah,
a Google Doc.
Right.
Communicating.
And I'm not sure we can do that. So
Understand.
I think what we could potentially find out is that, is there a document that Katie keeps that just has that people can go view it
It's
and be.
view only, and
Yeah,
then if
definitely.
you have a
And
thing,
then
you
if I
can
can
let,
tell Katie-
yeah, I'm not
And
gonna
then
get
if
to
there's
that.
something
Yeah.
someone disagrees with, then they reach out to Katie and say,
Right.
hey, I don't think that
I
represents
don't
what
think
I
that's it,
remember.
yeah,
And
or I
think-
don't have time.
I think as Aaron said, is because there are people doing work related to that, and I think this is a viable option for things that we're asking Tom as work, the things to bring back later on, is, hey, there's potentially a question or comment deadline, you know, in order to make sure that people have brought the information or provided their additional, so like, in a lot of it, it may be, hey, okay, we talked about this thing, and if everybody's like, I still think I need some more time for it in the meeting tonight, like for your example, right, of what we're talking about, if everybody wasn't all in on this school assignment thing and how that mechanism, if you have input, I think normally speaking, comments by the following Tuesday, give it a week, gives you a weekend to think about it. After that, kind of as a procedure, it is what it is, and whoever's been assigned it gets 3 weeks to get it done.
So like, so just kind of, hang on, because I got me thinking. So like right now on tonight's action item list, let's just call it. So it's, we got, Aaron's got one, and then, so then, will Katie put like, okay, Craig, you need to get you and Tom need to work with the groups to see who wants to, the committees, who wants to be on the committees, and the deadline for that is
Next meeting.
next
The
meeting.
and like, we would do that by the next meeting.
Yeah.
And then to that action, I'd say, if somebody has an opinion about what questions I might need to ask or anything else, it would be, you need to let me know by next Tuesday, if you feel that you changed your mind on a topic, or there's additional information you feel I need to know on that topic.
So the rhythm is, Katie posts something a certain date, and there's a time to review, and then after that review date, we're just assuming everybody looked at it and said, that's, all right, we're all in agreement.
Yeah, that was your.
It kinda has to be.
Because otherwise, you're right, if you wait, if you know, Monday night, you say, that's not what I remembered, well, it's too late, I mean, the person can't react to it.
If there's, I feel like there should be a little bit of, that's, because you wanna do when it's fresh, exactly like how you're saying, it's fresh in your brain. Let's say someone had just like, oh my God, life emergency, I think we need to be able to not be just black and white, like, okay, if it doesn't affect that person horribly and it's past the 1 week, I think we can use like, yeah, I got you, like, I'm giving that feedback.
Oh, I'm not, I mean, if something happens,
someone
if
says,
Katie
hey,
has something and she's.
Yeah.
I'm formulating something, I mean, we gotta be civil to each other, right? So if you're like,
Yeah,
hey,
that's fine.
I've been out of town all
Yes.
weekend, I didn't get a chance to get to it, can I get a couple extra
You're
days?
like, no, because
Yeah,
it's not
no,
just.
we're not
right,
doing
no.
like.
I mean,
I just wanna make sure.
I'll speak to myself, like if I don't have a deadline, then I just have a tendency to
Absolutely.
back burner things sometimes.
Yes, same
So
here.
if you had kind of know in your mind, like, well, I should try, you know, and roughly I should try to have this out within a week.
Yep.
And you'll probably establish working with Cindy, like,
It'll
this
be-
this is the amount of time I
She
need.
gets me the stuff,
You'll
yes.
figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
just
think
saying,
so.
rather than, you know, if it can be sooner rather than later, that would probably be
Of course,
beneficial.
yeah. And I think we would assume that any action item would be like for action at the next board meeting unless otherwise indicated.
Well, I think that's part of the
Yeah.
process, I mean,
Yeah.
this is what I do at work. Someone gets assigned something, who's doing it, when's it due?
Yeah.
The particulars of what's gonna happen, like how it happens, that's for whomever's involved in that to
Doing
figure
the
that
thing,
out.
yeah.
So Tom, does that sound reasonable to you? Because most of the actions are coming from you and your team. Is that a reasonable timeline of, this is the action list, this is time for discussion, if this is what we all agreed upon, just verifying it, and now it's like, here you go.
Yeah,
Is
and
that, would that work for you?
I think so, and then, you know, like we've talked about, if, I'm making something up here. You know, let's just say, you know what, let's say we're heading into the, close of the school year, but at the May board meeting or April board meeting, you all are like kinda having some great conversation, great ideas about something, but it's like, Tom, do you think the May board meeting is too aggressive? I might have to say, yeah.
Yeah.
We're all tied up in ending the year,
Yep, yep.
right? And
We
so can we,
definitely do.
can we look at June or July,
Yeah,
you
right,
know?
absolutely.
So. Yeah. Good to go, Lenny?
All right,
So we're done with that one?
so what I'm hearing, just to recap, so we can have head nods. Katie's gonna keep the list, that list is gonna get confirmed with the meeting minutes that Cindy's gonna put out, that it's hopefully gonna be done by the end of the week or very soon thereafter, and that if anybody has any, because hopefully coming out of the meeting, we will have a very good idea of what we think it is, that if there's any deviations or any further questions, we will try to follow up by the following Tuesday. Respective people need time to get the work done. Is that what I'm hearing, head nods?
Yep.
Yes, thank you. Okay. That's that one. Last two remaining, there's officer's term, and then meeting date.
Oh, what about polling and how you get items on the agenda?
I thought we were talking about that in the open session
Is that-
right now.
We can do that.
That's what I thought we would do.
Okay.
Like, hey, I wanna get this on the agenda, what do we think? And
Yeah, so that's happening, what I thought coming out of the meeting was that we were gonna do that in our meetings, kinda like we're doing literally right
Right
now.
now.
Right.
Yeah.
But we don't wanna
I was a little
designate,
slow at what you were picking up and saying.
So we're not doing polling, we're doing
I
this.
realized it halfway
Yeah,
through my
We're not
sentence.
gonna do a poll.
We're not gonna
and,
poll anymore, we're gonna have an open discussion
Discussion.
about it.
Is that happening in board comments? Is that where we're gonna be? Being like, hey, guys, I blah, blah, blah.
Right, which.
That's kind of,
yeah, where?
that's kind of like what it sounded like that, at least when I judged what Laura kind of reacted to when we said
Yeah.
board comments.
Right.
Was, you know, hey, this, is you know, we were like, oh, why are you not commenting on those things? It's like, oh, nobody ever has, so I never even thought it was an option.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I don't mind it being in board comments. I guess the question is from a structure of polling, is that someone brings it up themselves and asks? Is that they kicked it to me so that it's more of a generic question and then everybody gets to provide a thumbs up, thumbs down? Because like right now, we're talking about these things, but historically what would typically happen is the board would then have a consensus on, yes, we're gonna talk about that, that will go on the next meeting, right? We're not gonna be prepared to talk about it in that meeting, so
Right.
really it's just a, yes, I'm interested, no, I'm not, and
Yes.
like someone maybe presents a pro and con discussion on that to try to keep it fair and keep it open to everybody. I don't know how to handle it, I'm just trying to make sure that when we're doing these polling, we don't talk for an hour about whether we should talk about a topic.
No, yeah, I think it's not a question of like, do we wanna discuss it? It's do we wanna discuss it later, not right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think anybody could say that, right?
I don't think it's fair to Craig or whoever the president is, but for you to, we've ran into, like, how do I phrase what you're trying to say, Danielle? And, you know, I think it's just easier for the person who has whatever they want to bring to just, and just say, this is what I'm interested in, and then you get the consensus without having a whole conversation about it. There.
Is there precedent with other boards, or could Laura give us like a mechanism for how, if other boards do this, how they structure their meetings to accommodate it?
I feel like we asked.
I think she said board comments, because we said that we just talk and we don't really have a discussion. She was kind of like,
Yeah,
She wasn't a huge fan of board comments just being an open place.
period,
for
yeah,
those
right,
comments.
right.
So I would probably say she'd support
That
the
being a
use
polling
of board
time.
comments being agenda time.
Yeah, Yeah.
Because she was a supporter of the idea as a board, if there's an individual board member who would like to see if the board's interested in having a topic discussed, that you would all provide a consensus whether it should be placed on the next month's agenda.
right.
And then at that time, it would also.
That's then when you would have the bigger discussion.
Right.
right.
Or whatever month is appropriate, because if there's things, I'm just putting out there may be topics that come up this, with everything else, needs to be decided on what meeting is coming up, and also how much work others may need to do to be able to prepare
Right.
us to make a good decision.
But we would be having on the next agenda for discussion, not for any kind of action.
Right.
Okay.
And, right, like, cause we're saying, I wanna talk about this, and next, you put it in the agenda, but just for discussion. And I think if you needed action, then you would definitely want,
That may even be a follow-up meeting
Yeah.
after that, because, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, but there's gonna be, I think there's gonna be agenda items that, maybe just for discussion, like you said, that we may need some education to us from staff to help us get up to speed to understand all aspects of it, to be prepared to have a discussion, not necessarily make a decision. I'm just trying to say that there may be, it may not be the next meeting because of whatever the topic is.
Yeah, I don't think there's like a sense of urgency around it. I think it's just more like is everybody else interested in talking
Okay.
about this at some time? Yeah.
Well, I would,
But then we would have that on the action item list.
you would.
right?
It'd be in so many places, yeah.
I don't wanna use the sometime, like, I don't think you meant it literally, but I would ask that, like, what is our parameter around that? So
Okay.
if we say, hey, I wanna pull, Craig, you're like, I'll find what agenda it falls in. I think we need to be able to have that on our list, so that we make sure it gets onto an agenda.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah, but I don't know what that looks like
It would
for
stay
you.
on the action
I
item
think it's just
list.
do an action item.
Yeah.
The action item is future agenda item,
We're interested in talking
you know,
about it.
bicycle locks.
Or whatever, yeah.
Okay.
You know, at schools, or
Right.
whatever it is.
And then, so when does that get updated with the month or whatever? So that person, just again, so that if I'm asking for it to be, I poll, yes, I know it's gonna be put on agenda and I don't have to follow up.
Correct.
So, but how does that, what is
Yeah,
that?
so do you mind if I ask another
Absolutely.
clarifying question too, to Danielle's point, is, did I hear that you would wanna put it under action?
No, we're
No.
trying to, we're saying it wouldn't be an action item.
Dis-
Oh, okay,
Discussion.
okay,
It's a
okay,
discussion
okay.
only.
Yep, okay, so then Danielle, you're saying if there's consensus,
Yeah,
that would then go to the next,
let's say I poll in March and we're like, there's no way that we're gonna talk about this before May, and we're like, okay, in their June agenda. Like, that's all I'm saying is like.
could that be part of our
Yes,
to-do list thing?
yes.
Yeah, well, I don't know, do you make that decision? I don't know who makes a decision.
No, I
about
think
But
it
that.
just
if you
goes
all
on.
have consensus on it as a board, there's a
Okay.
majority consensus that you bring it up in March, but yeah, we all agree, we're gonna talk about it in June, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Then I think on that list, we track it out. We have a board agenda tracker document that we use as a cabinet team with Cindy. So it could, we kind of also are tracking things.
And I think it's fair to say, okay, we'll target it for the next meeting. If something comes out,
Yeah.
it's incumbent upon me to say, hey, we identified it for this, but because of X, Y, and Z reason, we'd like to postpone it a month. Does anybody have a particular concern?
Right.
So
Makes sense.
nobody is surprised about it.
Yeah.
That's my responsibility as board president, in my
Okay.
opinion, for being able to manage that part of the agenda.
Okay.
So that, okay. This is good, okay.
All right. Poll, any? Meeting dates.
Yeah.
So Tuesday nights. Are we still the first Tuesday after the 19th, or are we the third Tuesday? What's our official date?
It's generally the third Tuesday with exceptions.
What do we clash with? What is the,
Sometimes Park District, but they seem to be earlier, and then don't, City Council, aren't they like a? they're the
yeah, well, they do
Tuesday,
committee of the whole one day and then council the other day, yeah, okay.
Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
I looked at, there's a lot of days we don't overlap with them. And
Yeah,
there's some-
I'm
They
wondering
have a
if,
lot more meetings than us in general.
They do.
I personally have like set my schedule around what's going on right now, so like, you know what I mean? So like if we change it, that might throw off some stuff, but I'm one person, so,
Right.
I don't know.
I would say personally for me, I've kind of done the same.
Yeah.
And I kind of like, even with my work.
Right.
And I also think we've been doing this way for so long, there's sort of an expectation of the community that they sort of, people that are engaged.
That's why I've brought it up, is because the people who are engaged have a very hard time floating between the various meetings on the same
Yeah,
day.
right.
It's hard to stay informed when you can't go to them when they do fall on the same day. I think lately they haven't been somehow, but there's been tons of days where they are on the same day.
Okay.
So I think for some people who wanna stay informed, they gotta pick one or the other, or for us, I can't go to Park, or I can't, I'm not going, but if I wanted to go for some reason, we can't do it. And that is the only reason why it was brought up, and if, I'm one person, so if y'all don't,
The only thing I can think of is, our meetings are already set for the next year, right?
Yeah, this is for
Yeah.
like next year.
So,
Yeah.
I think maybe this will be an action
Put it
item
on
that
the old
come on
list.
February, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I mean,
I think that's just when I think that's a good point. When the next one comes up, I don't know if it's a next February.
I
This-
just
This
say
action item
when
floats
it
out there for
comes.
7
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
But-
Cindy has a comment.
You're the first test of the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, when do we, yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, the parameters we follow isn't really the third Tuesday, although they tend to fall on the third Tuesday. The parameters we follow is preferably after the 19th.
Yeah, it's the
of
first
month
Tuesday after the
because of-
19th.
Oh,
Because
okay.
of the business
I-
office.
Okay.
Their duties.
Which actually institutes a bit of a randomness in it, that it's
Which is
what I
probably
think
why
is
it
what
doesn't-
pushes it around
Yeah.
a little bit. I will say the Tuesday thing, the administration and Cindy and Tom and others do a good job pulling the board book together by that Friday. And because of the Tuesday date, we actually get more time to review it than would, now if it was Wednesday, it's a little too early to ask them to issue it on Tuesday, on that Friday, because that's well far in advance.
Right.
Right, so then now they're not gonna issue it till Monday. Friday is a death knell to meeting dates. Thursday, I probably would just have a hard time getting to any meetings, because every other municipality, libraries and whatever, also pick Thursdays for some reason.
Right.
Like a lot of other ones do,
yeah.
you know? So, I feel like the Tuesday actually gives us extra time to review and sit down and kind of consider things. And I think we get better questions because of it.
Maybe it's something we just monitor over the next year and see how many questions there are. Or
Okay.
if we get additional feedback from,
I mean, maybe that's the other thing is, I mean, I know you said you hear from people that you discuss and work
Right.
with, but I don't hear it from anybody,
Yeah.
you know? And that's why we record it, so they can watch it 2 days later, and they can certainly send us an email if there's something they don't like or reach out. So. Because actually, a lot of school districts don't actually record their meetings like we do, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's nice that we do.
Okay, so currently keep them on Tuesday, no change on that.
Do we need to, what did we decide about adding in that day for special meetings?
I think we decided we would try to identify particular topics that are atypical, and we would do special meetings for that. I think we just figure out what works calendar-wise for people to make sure they can attend.
We had discussed setting a meeting because of, I think
Oh,
Tom
oh,
spoke
oh.
to it because of our need to post it, because if it is a special meeting. And so I don't know if it was Laura, I don't know who had talked about that we just have a day every month, and if we don't use it, we don't use it.
just cancel
That's
it.
But
fine
it's
with me.
slated, but I don't think we
If we're doing the third,
finalized.
I mean, if we could do the first Wednesday of the month to try to get it off of a Tuesday as for a special meeting date. And then we all try to block it out or something, and then we go there. That was the discussion. Thank you for reminding
Yeah,
us that was, try to identify, if we're gonna do a special meeting, it's gonna be on that, and everybody tries to clear their calendar for those nights as needed on the alternate dates. That was what was put out there.
So like the presentation we're having tomorrow, we'd have days that would be like a placeholder for those kind of
We would
meetings?
say the first Wednesday of the month, or the Wednesday after the board meeting, whatever it may be, is the special meeting day.
or if like if we're getting something that we need to, have action on, but we feel like it needs a bigger discussion than what because the problem that we were talking about was how our agendas, our discussion usually fall at 9 o'clock at night, right? And so like it was a way for us to take items, to have a meeting, just to have a discussion about various things that we may be taking action on later in the month. But also could be used for like the presentations. But yeah, because right now we were talking about like, we just, like DMG, we smash that into a full agenda, 9 o'clock at night. And we were like, we don't really have time for discussion when it's in our regular.
Would you want to consider as a board starting your meetings at 6 instead of 7?
I would say no for me, because sometimes I'm traveling and I'm coming in hot, and so that extra hour makes a big difference.
Okay.
And I think people work, and so 6 o'clock would be tough for people to tougher for people to arrive.
You're still having a discussion in the middle of an agenda too, or at the end of an agenda. So like it's not intended, right? But like I think a lot of times we're like, oh, we gotta kind of get through this because there's
It's
things on
tough.
top, on bottom. And it's not for everything, but for things that maybe if some of us feel like, I wanna have a bigger discussion about this. And
I don't know how you frame that to be able to make it consistent and equitable for deciding what's gonna need a discussion and not need a discussion per se. Can't figure out a mechanism that you would say, okay, this, because sometimes we don't know, the topics are coming up in our board, we try to get identifiable items. I think Tom and company have done a good job of trying to identify ones that we think are gonna need more intense, longer discussion, and we try to push those to new dates and see how that works. But I don't know if it's really I'm trying to figure out if it's a discussion as it relates to future action item.
And unfortunately, one or two of those instances that happened this year were due to unpredictable circumstances that resulted in a very long closed session. That was out of everybody's control. You would not have predicted why we needed to go to closed session at the start of the year.
If I may interject too, I've been attending board meetings for almost 25 years, and I've noticed that there's a pattern with, the issues that the board faces and the age of the members who serve on the board. There's a certain cadence and it changes. For a long time, we go through really short meetings, and then we go through a spate of really long meetings, and it's not fixed. It has the tendency to kind of come and go for what it's worth.
How does everybody feel about topic one, even having alternate meeting dates?
I'm gonna be really honest, I'm white, so
No.
I offered up these that we could just pull
Right.
them for future meetings.
right, I'm like, right now, I can't think about
Yeah.
how I'm gonna do it, like my
Scheduling,
calendar.
I know, yeah.
I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
So
I think there's just too much unknown in people's lives, where,
I would say also like, cause I'm thinking again, like now we've opened up calendars to get, I'm just hesitant to put another date on the calendar where we might be blocking things out. Like, I think, what I would hope is as a group, we could identify, like with these presentations, there will be, to Tony's point, there's gonna be things that happen that are, we can't anticipate that will necessitate very long meetings. And we'll have discussions late into the night or early morning, but then there are definitely things that will, as a board, we've sort of identified like these presentations from the buildings and from Tom that we know are definitely gonna take, so we're making space for that. But to put on the calendar another day, just, cause then I'm even wondering like, well, what's our process for determining
what goes
on it?
the consensus, I'll use the strategic plan as a perfect example. I know again, these aren't things that are happening, I don't wanna say they're every month. I think it was brought up to have a day because of the need to have something scheduled.
notice?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was whatever, Tom, you had brought it up, and I think Laura and you were, I don't know about what a special meeting, what the notice is, but it was different than our normal meetings.
Yeah, I think what we were just trying to highlight was, if you're planning something where you know you wanna have 2 meetings in a month, when you plan out next year's calendar dates, for example, and if the board's like, on this month and this month, we're gonna be holding 2 board meetings, it's really actually 2 regular board meetings. And, there are just different parameters that I think Laura and I were just trying to explain that you can operate as a board from, where there's a little bit more flexibility when it's a regular board meeting versus a special board meeting is when you're convening because there's something that was unanticipated or an emergency or something that you had to convene as a board. And those conditions are really specific and narrow. They're much more narrower. And there is just a window of time that you have to allow to set up for the meeting. And that part is a little similar, like when we have to post our agenda 48 hours in advance. So there's some similarities in that sense. But with a special board meeting, the reason why the scope of that meeting, the way you conduct that meeting is so much narrower, because it's intended for a public body such as yourselves to do it under emergency conditions, to address something that's come up that you didn't anticipate.
That one, so going back to the example, is like we had that in a May meeting, the day before graduation, and it was so late at night, and there was so much that led up to that. We had a massive public comment session, blah, blah, blah. This is one of the biggest decisions that a board can make for the district. And we jam-packed it in that night, and then the next month, we were supposed to vote on it, I think, and we said, okay, we're gonna wait. And the next month, we went and voted on it, but we really didn't have a board discussion. I guess it does it not bother you? It bothers me that we don't sit down as a board and have very much discussion on really big items. I'm not talking about like our consent agenda. I'm not talking about maybe some of these things, and I don't know what the perfect example is. Like bullying, to me, would have justified a really lengthy discussion, but what happens is that we're in the middle of an agenda where we can't give it, in my opinion, the time and the space it needs. And I think that's where we've discussed having a meeting would be, like a special meeting for it or whatever would be helpful. Instead of doing it at, again, 9, 10 o'clock at night when we're all exhausted. And then we're supposed to come the next month to do action, when we really haven't had discussion. And I think that's where I've asked about it. Are you confused? Because you're looking at me,
No, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. You look so.
This is me trying to give you my full attention. Is that okay?
You're like, yeah.
Is it making you uncomfortable? I can pivot back around this way.
No. You looked a little like.
No.
Okay. I just want to make sure like that makes sense.
that's-
So then I guess the
Yeah,
question
yeah.
is, we'll just take the strategic plan in May. So I guess if we ever have this again or something like that, then we would just say in our board comments, like, hey, I think we need to have a special meeting next month to do that. Because I don't think I can say,
Yeah.
I don't think we should have a placeholder every month,
Right.
because we're not gonna have something like.
I didn't
that.
want the placeholder.
Right.
That was what was recommended.
Right, I'm just saying, like,
Yeah,
I think we
guess.
said, so we can just kind of do, I think that way, is in the board
that it?
comments, if you feel we need to have an in-depth conversation about this thing, it's polling.
Can we do that?
Okay, that's
like
what I
a
had-
silly question.
And then
Kinda
can we do
polling, isn't
another, can we do a board
Yeah.
meeting in 2 weeks,
Right,
just to discuss
right, this
this
item.
topic?
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Like how you doing tomorrow? We're having a board meeting just to go over that presentation.
And that's how that happened.
We can confirm
actually.
that. I think that is
decided
because that is
we're gonna
in
take-
trying to
That
make
was the
sure that
process.
We wanted to give it the
we
right.
make the decisions in a timely manner, in a time when people are kind of expecting them. So like, if a budget item comes up and we need to really have a big discussion about that, but we don't think we're gonna be able to get it in a meeting, then someone could say, okay, yes, that's coming up, I think we need a discussion on that topic.
Like, in my opinion, DMG should have been, for me, one of those times, and we're working behind that. Like, if we had something in place, I would have done in my comments, hey, I would like us to have a more in-depth conversation, because it was, again, sandwiched in the middle. To me, it's a big deal, and it's something that deserves our attention and our discussion. So, yeah, I just didn't know, so when we were talking about it in our workshop, it wasn't clear if that would be successful. Like, can we make that work, and is that, like, time-wise, is that okay? Does that, or is that against any rules, or
I don't think it's against. I
timelines?
mean, we'll bounce it off and see it, but I don't think it's against the rules, because it's a one-time thing for a discussion on a particular topic. That I think we would, and it would be handled a lot like the polling situation of, I think we have an agenda item, I don't wanna talk about that at a regular meeting, let's talk about that at a different
I think
meeting.
it is essentially, it is polling, it's another form of polling. It's just a question to ask, right?
Yeah.
Like, does anybody else?
And
have
it'll be
a-
case by case, if it's
Right.
like, hey, we can't do a special meeting on that, we gotta do it
We
with the
have
other
to,
one.
yeah,
Hey,
there's
the board,
urgency.
the admin, I need to know, Craig Meadows, I need to know this information to be able to have that discussion, they can't pull that together in 2 weeks.
Right.
So, but we gotta be careful about it, like, it's tough, right, cause it's this job, you gotta make decisions sometimes with the least amount of information possible. And I appreciate you're trying to make sure you and the rest of us are well versed on the topic and have an opportunity to discuss it. So
Well,
it's
there's certain topics that I'm okay, like ELA here, Brad did a great job of
He did.
walking me through.
Right.
I've sat in CAC, so no, but, yeah, there's bigger things that are determining the direction of this district,
And-
yeah.
And I think the polling thing is a good idea, because I don't, what you think are big, important ideas I may not even think of them as
Yeah,
that
right,
way,
right.
right? So I wouldn't know right now to say, let's make those a specialized discussion,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So then I think handling it as kind of a polling thing is a good way to deal with that. And see how that goes.
Yep.
Okay.
So I understand. So what we decided was that in our comments, at the end, if a board member wants to propose, I think this deserves further discussion in a standalone meeting, we could propose that. We're not gonna have a date on the calendar that says this is reserved for that, we would figure out when it would occur.
Right.
Is that accurate?
Based on availability. That's what I'm hearing kind of from everybody else.
Yep.
Okay,
Does that sound right to everybody?
okay, all right. The only one that's left is officer term.
Can I ask, actually,
Yes,
Clarify.
of course.
was there consensus from the board that you do want me and Cindy to reach out to Laura to see if we can schedule a future workshop? What, did we get consensus on that? I can't remember.
I don't
No,
think
we
we
didn't.
did.
No.
I
would
heard,
like
I heard one,
We
I
heard
heard
one.
you say you really would like
And
that.
actually, one of the things I
couldn't
thought would
remember
be
what
on it
everybody
was the
else.
to-do list thing, but we just went through that and figured it out, so.
So, no.
Aaron, you're gonna propose the question?
I thought I did, but if, I mean, I'm one vote, so if the other 6 people don't think it's necessary, then, okay, not or have yes.
Your proposal.
So you're,
He would want one.
Yes.
I'm indifferent. If people want them, then I'll go.
That's how I feel. I go with the consensus. I go with the majority.
If
So
I go
here's
to
the
the
thing,
runner?
if there's 4 people that are indifferent, right?
What does that
Does
mean?
2 mean, yeah, 2 or 3 yeses,
How do you
take it,
interpret
because
indifferent?
I'm just,
Then that's enough.
as a little bit of a point, we will be going to lots of meetings.
Yeah.
If it's a pretty good
you
idea to
sort of
talk
have
about
to
it.
go up or down, right?
Yeah.
Can I change my vote then?
Yes, you may.
Oh,
No, I'm indifferent.
Not gonna hurt my
I'm
feelings.
okay with either decision, I guess I'm indifferent. too.
indifferent, yeah.
What did she come for when we talked about like the superintendent tool? Was that just one of our?
That was our,
metrics?
we do this every year, so we would do another one with her, and on that particular one, we asked her to come in and talk about superintendent evaluation process.
Okay.
So, my opinion, we do these every year, we just do this one as a board evaluation, and because it's on the years, there's new board members, it's always set up as a starting right.
I mean, it feels like we kind of got to the rest of the items today, right, that we would have needed to. I don't know.
I mean, I'm okay that if we, like, look, if anybody feels uncomfortable and wants to have that, then just hit the eject button and let's talk, we can get in a meeting and talk about it. Okay,
I don't know what-
we'll table that one for right now.
Table it.
Yes, table it.
Okay, tabled. Thank you.
Maybe we have to have a couple more meetings as a board to see how we jive together.
Yeah,
There we
right.
go.
Could be onto something.
The only one that was left on the list was officer terms, now technically speaking, that's a board policy.
That's a policy thing.
So one thing that could happen is we have a policy committee, let them review what they think of that topic at their own meeting another day, and come back with what they think
have
the
a meeting
pros
in
and cons
July.
are of that list.
We got one in July.
We have one in July, so we could put it on the agenda.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So it'll be on the agenda as a policy.
Review the
whatever.
policy,
E-
what the
Even
law
if we
says.
talked about it, and we had a big discussion and said, yes, we wanna do it, technically it still has to go to the policy committee.
Right, right.
So my opinion is, let them talk about it first, make a recommendation if they think it should or shouldn't be, then we can have our discussion kind of at the
Does the
July
policy
meeting or
committee-
just after, or after.
There's gonna
Do
be a
you
lot
wanna
of
hear
policy
from us
discussion.
about it, or, yeah?
Say that again, I'm
Do you
sorry.
wanna hear from us what we think about it, or is it? something-
Sure, or it's also open to the public, so you can come
Right,
and make
right,
a
right.
comment on it.
Sure, yeah, yeah,
It's
okay.
posted.
It's posted, so other board members can decide to come to that meeting.
People have
Right.
attended some of them. yeah.
Okay,
July agenda.
But we won't, so what we would do is we would talk about, then we would come and wherever we land, and we would have a discussion here about it.
right.
What are you guys, I guess, I know why I had that on the list, like, I know some of my thoughts, but you guys have, you're gonna look at the policy, and there's not gonna be anything to update, it's a little different of an ask, I think, isn't it?
Well, we would just say that, I think there's people on the current board that wanna change the policy to the term years.
Right,
So pros and cons of it, you know.
and then you bring that back to us, that makes sense.
There's probably also like regulations about how certain things work that we'd have the lawyers look at possibly, because
Mhm.
there's
Yes.
legal updates, like
Yeah.
this is legal language you can't change
Right.
because
Yeah.
of this.
Yeah,
So they give us notes that we review before the meeting, and then we review it with Tom and Tony or whoever, Brad. And they're like, well, the law says this, or the recommendation of ISB is this, and then we have our discussion about it, and then we come back and we share it with the group.
They don't change the policy, they just bring
No.
it.
No, I know, I was asking if it would show up like on our agenda, how the other ones have, like it's policy and then they present it.
I think so, yes.
I think it lists out all the policies that we're going over.
There'll be quite a bit on there, yeah.
Because there might be other ones on top of that one.
Yeah.
That was the last one I
That was
recall.
it, yeah.
Hey, you guys got a lot.
And it's still only 9:51.
Wow.
I'll keep my board comments short.
Are you gonna filibuster now?
Brought the phone book, if anybody remembers what those are.
Oh, I think you were saying yes for a second, I was like, what?
Yeah, what, the phone book? All right, so, thank you, that was a good discussion, so appreciate it. All right, admin comments. Tom, would you like to wake anybody up over there on the?
No, I just.
We have
wanted-
been.
Yeah, see, that's what, look,
Yes.
I just hope everyone continues to have a wonderful summer. That's it, I'm done.
Board comments. Please don't poll tonight.
I did have an item I wanted to
You can
pull.
No, fine, go for it.
Well, yeah,
I'm joking.
so we had an email from a parent, and they gave a really detailed, I don't know if anybody went through it, it was Lauren McLeod's RMS, presentation on cell phones and, what was the other thing? Recess at the middle school level, and then, another parent emailed us and recommended a book. And my interest in the initial topic was based on this book that, it was RJ that emailed and said, have you read this? So I just wanted to know if anybody was interested in talking about cell phone usage at the district level. I'm not as interested in the recess piece of it, because I don't know how, I think that gets more into like scheduling and stuff. But if anybody looked at that and wanted to discuss it any further. Because I think they're waiting for a response probably from us. I don't know, I would have to go back and read the email.
I guess the question is, you guys might know better, but is Pritzker gonna sign a law? Was he gonna sign something in about
Didn't he
cell
already
phones?
do it?
No, it's not
Didn't it?
signed
It's
in, yeah.
passed
Oh.
both chambers and is heading to his desk. I
Okay.
think it's going to end up being
And he
like
probably
the
will
stack of
sign
things
it?
that he's
Yeah.
gonna sign off
So
on.
Okay.
maybe, should we wait
Wait
until
on
it's
that.
signed,
Okay.
and then we can discuss how it's gonna affect our policy?
I'm fine with that. I think we do just need to get back to that parent
I-
or those two parents.
I will get back, I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's some things there that were extenuating circumstances of not getting back, but.
Sure, yeah, no, I just, it was outstanding.
fair.
I was very interested in it. It was a great slideshow they put together on their free time, and it had a lot of really valuable information in it, so.
I've had a parent actually give me that book, the
It's a
Anxious-
great
Anxious
book. It's a
Generation.
great book.
I have not read it yet, but,
Yeah.
there is definitely, I think the community, I know St. Charles had last year had gone through their thing, I think this next school year, they're implementing something, so I think people in Batavia heard about St. Charles, and they're curious, and all of that, so I know that it's something that the community does wonder about, and,
The book is worth a read. It's a great audiobook listen if,
You're speaking my language.
Yeah, it
I
is,
have
it
been,
is.
I have been in line in Libby for like, they keep like dropping me because I'm like 400th.
Yeah.
It's like I can't get it.
Yeah, no, and I was gonna say, I listened to it through the library, so at some point I was on the list for it, but that's how I took in the information, and it is very interesting information.
So it's primarily about the cell phone
Yeah,
component
yeah,
of that.
yeah.
And because I think you're correct in your assessment, the other ones kind of fall a bit out of board level.
The recess
Potentially.
stuff, yeah, I mean, I understand the tie-in to it, but I think the cell phone usage would be more in our,
So let's wait to see what happens with that.
Pritzker?
And then
Okay.
it gets looked at from a policy, because in reading some of that information, I was confused if it was a policy issue or an enforcement issue.
right,
More
right.
than anything else. And if
Okay.
that's enforcement issue, that's not necessarily
An
our
us
level.
thing, yeah.
That is, because it's reasonably prescriptive, and then what's actually enforceable, so like, trying to keep kids off of phones on
Sure.
buses is gonna be nearly impossible,
100%.
you know?
And
I
I'll
mean,
make sure
maybe
the board
that's-
is alerted to, any
Okay.
legal update with
Okay,
that. I'll make sure
definitely.
you guys
I'm
get that in my
interested.
notes,
Okay,
so,
thank you.
yeah, that'll be one that a lot of people are talking about,
Okay,
so. Okay.
So is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Do you feel that addresses your question?
it does, yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right, who wants to start? Or do you have other board comments, or would you like to
No,
continue?
I mean, thank you, Brad and Tony, for the nuance and the context around those two items, the budget and the that was really helpful tonight, so thank you so much. And I enjoyed our discussion about all of our follow-up items too. Thought we did a nice job with that.
All right, anybody else wanna start? Kristen?
I got nothing tonight.
Got nothing. Love it.
Support young artists on your t-shirt.
I do like that.
Rob?
So hope everyone's still having a great summer, but also thank you to Brad and Tony for your presentations this evening.
All right, so happy Pride Month, happy belated Juneteenth, happy Caribbean American Month, and I hope everyone has a safe and healthy and happy 4th of July.
I'll say thanks to Dr. Newkirk and Dr. Inglesi. We had a good discussion. I enjoyed our discussions as a board as a whole. I thought it was productive. I look forward to tomorrow night. The presentations we'll have tomorrow night. I hope people tune in. And I'll just say, I heard from a little birdie that Mr. Kim had a birthday last week, so I just want to go on the record and say happy birthday to Tom.
Oh, you're
Happy
a
birthday.
good guy.
Congratulations on another trip around the sun.
No one will ever know my birthday.
Careful.
Yeah, I was gonna say Cindy knows.
Don't ever tell
All right, Danielle.
You guys have a cake
wanna
for
add?
us?
No, I echo, thanks Brad and Tony for the great presentations
those were
and
great.
filling us in, and yeah, hope everyone continues to have a great summer.
All right, I'm just gonna echo, one thing I do wanna say about, I've been noticing a lot with the Pride Month and other things, a lot of really good information and posts being come out, so Holly, thank you for that, for all of that. It's been insightful and educational, all at the same time. So thank you. And then I hope everybody enjoys their summer as it marches along and try not to think about 2 months from now, so. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Raquel,
Second.
second by Katie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is now 9:57 PM.
Nice.
Meeting is adjourned.
Has anyone ever opposed?